A boy wakes up in the middle of nowhere, wondering where he is, because the place around him is very strange. Looking around, he sees some boxes and wonders if he's underground or inside the trunk of a taxi. As he moves a little, his finger touches a spider web, which scares him quite a bit. We realize that he is inside a box and everything around him is narrow and dark, which makes him question where he is. With a strong headache and cold sweat, since he's in a tight corner, he takes a deep breath and starts thinking about what happened last night for him to end up here. The first thing he immediately remembers is that he was in an empty parking lot. After trying a little harder, he recalls that his name is Kim. He's 30 years old and works as an employee. Thinking a bit more, he reflects that maybe he got drunk at the end of the night and ended up in a weird place like this. Drinking wasn't part of his hobbies, and he obviously went straight to the dorm, since he had more important things to do. When he arrived home at night, he had more important things to take care of that required his full attention. The first thing he did upon arriving home was open a can of energy drink to stay awake and fully alert through the night. Then we find out that what he really wanted was to spend the entire night playing an online RPG game non-stop. All night long, he played that game, drinking several cans of energy drinks and never moving from his initial position, completely addicted to the RPG. But something doesn't add up because it doesn't make sense to end up in the middle of nowhere when the night before he was comfortable in his own home. Afraid, he starts to wonder where he is and what is happening, because the only remaining hypothesis is that he's dreaming, since he's had a similar dream before. Suddenly, the box the boy is trapped in starts to fall, injuring him slightly and scaring him even more. Some footsteps can be seen in puddles of water, while someone unseen speaks, telling him to stop. Upon hearing the voice, the boy begins to understand what's happening and starts connecting the dots of everything that's happened so far and where he is. Reflecting deeply, he finally realizes that he's inside a wooden carriage. However, this is very strange because carriages aren't used anymore in the 21st century, especially in Korea, such a high-tech place. A masked man looks at the carriage and asks how a certain piglet transporting the packages is doing. With an evil smile, he says he managed to capture him because he was very obedient and believed everything he was told. But more masked people appear and start talking, saying that the person or the so-called piglet looks like a father when seen from the side. Inside the carriage, the main character hears everything and probably realizes the masked ones are talking about him. The two men keep talking and one of them praises his friend's works, saying it was very well done this time. Then they say this will be the glorious revenge of Saint Aeolum, and this line is familiar to the protagonist, who is shocked to hear it. This is a known line from the game he was playing the previous night called World Forgotten by God. This surprises the protagonist a lot because it's one of the main storylines in the game and shouldn't be happening in the real world. The main scenario being referenced is about the fall of the third prince, a very important event in the entire game. The boy begins to wonder if this is some kind of prank, because it's exactly the same line of dialogue from the scene he was playing yesterday. In the forest, someone begins to approach with quick but silent footsteps. From inside the box, the protagonist hears everything, trying to understand what is going on. The person who appears is one of the masked individuals who captured the boy. After reaching the carriage, he opens the coffin where the main character was trapped, and we see his skin is that of a chubby boy. Upon being freed, the boy is stunned by what's happening, because he's seeing a character from the game he played alive right in front of him. The skin being used is called Pig Prince, and he is also the third prince of the Magic Empire, one of the largest factions in existence. In the game, the pig had baby-like habits to the point of fainting. Because of his personality, the protagonist liked this character, but he was so lazy that his very existence brought problems. Due to this problematic personality, the nickname Pig Prince was created and gold coins were minted based on it. The entire life of this character was full of excess, eating too much, drinking too much. And this lifestyle brought many problems and sworn enemies against the so-called prince. Because of all these enemies, he was captured by the revolutionaries and was eventually going to pass on to the afterlife because of it. Finally, connecting all the dots for real, the main character finally realizes that he is Glozin inside this game. Having played this scenario many times, the boy knows exactly what lines are coming next and starts to predict them perfectly. Then, after all the talking, several hands begin to pull the prince, telling him to get out of the box. As he's thrown to the ground with full force, he begs to be released, afraid of losing his life. The man with white hair points at the main character and says that in the name of the Republic, you will go to heaven today. This is worrying because the scenario is unfolding exactly as it did in the game. And the only purpose of this character in the entire story is to have his head cut off and sent to his father, the Emperor. Unfortunately, the protagonist has become this useless character who only exists to be disposable. Normally in anime, when someone switches bodies with another person, it's completely different from this. In the books the MC used to read, people usually turn into handsome characters or very powerful protagonists. In this moment of despair, the blonde boy starts thinking about who the main character is that reached max level in the game. Most likely, the character he's referring to now is the hooded one, who seems to be the strongest of all present. This person appears very powerful and continues to act mysteriously, hiding his face the entire time. Seeing the man approach, the chubby boy becomes desperate, as he currently has no power and doesn't know what to do. The old man approaches with a sword, eager to finally complete his mission and send a message to the Emperor. With a sharp blade pointed at his face, the pig is asked what his last words are. With little time to think, the only thing he can do is scream not to do it and ask how this all happened. Because until yesterday, all he was just a secondary person in the world, someone who didn't matter to anyone. and now he's about to be defeated because he suddenly switched bodies with a character who only exists to drink. Then something crosses the boy's mind that makes him shout something about a dog. Laughing hard, the masked man asks if the pig likes dogs, joking that those are great last words. Desperate, the boy screams once more to wait a minute, saying he wants to say something important. However, already very irritated with the time being wasted, the old man yells that there are no more seconds left for regret. There's nothing more to be done as the sword slices through the air quickly, heading straight for the boy, which is very sad because since his birth, he never had anything, always being someone secondary and disposable. He never had a mother or a father, growing up alone in the world in a lonely and sad way. Growing up in an orphanage, as soon as he became an adult, he was sent to work in a factory to produce as if he were a tool, being treated as nothing more than a worker collecting parts, someone who could be easily replaced by another. Even after turning 30, he remained stuck as an employee at a conference supply store. His home was a tiny dorm room, barely enough to sleep in comfortably. His hope was to prepare for a civil service exam, but he didn't know if he would pass, as it was very hard and he had little time in the day to study. The only good thing in his life was a laptop that could run the game he's now inside. He was addicted to that game with a max-level character, having fun every day without stopping. Before switching bodies, a message appeared inside his game. Someone was asking if he was willing to start a second life. That proposal sparked the boy's curiosity, making him eager to know what it was about. With his ugly and crooked finger, he started typing because he was so curious to find out. There was a message he sent saying he was excited to start his second life, and it didn't take long for the person to reply showing interest. The man's message asked if the boy was sure, because starting a second life wouldn't be easy. Their reply made the MC curious, since he had responded as a joke, but the other person didn't seem to be joking at all. But something made him reflect that maybe the other person's life was hard too, and he replied saying they should do their best together. The dog god's response is that this is a great attitude, showing a lot of excitement. Some time passes, and another message says it hopes the boy survives and is able to do everything he wants to in the world. This makes the boy curious because everyone wants to survive in the real world. Then, as soon as the protagonist clicks the button on the computer, a strange energy starts to appear. That same energy begins to pull him into the computer, taking his entire body to a strange place. Being transported inside the computer, he reflects that there are many things he still hasn't achieved in this life. Then we return to the present, just seconds before he loses his life. This thought, that there are still things to achieve, motivates the main character, giving him great power to react in that moment. His hatred toward the system is strong enough to cause red lasers to strike all the men around him. All of his power is unknown even to the boy himself, who wonders what is happening to his body. His unlocked power makes it seem as if the world suddenly froze, giving him a chance to act. Fortunately, time stopped just seconds before the sword hit him, allowing him to survive. Still very confused, the boy keeps wondering what is happening as he hasn't yet truly understood if time stopped or not. He thought time had stopped because he was thinking about something important at that moment. Suddenly, a message appears in the sky saying that the game has just begun. This leaves the boy even more confused, wondering why there's a status message in the sky. It's the initial message that shows up when the game begins. Finally, the boy can start playing the game, beginning his second life. Another message appears in the sky, startling the boy and leaving him confused. It says that the playable character Jilosin is now being controlled by the player Kim. This kind of window that appeared above is something familiar to the boy, who gets excited to see it. He remembers that he played this game so many times he's seen that message over 100 times. Suddenly, a notification announcing the beginning appears, making the boy even more anxious. Finally, this is the good part that shows up in the comic books he used to read. Having played this game for half his life, he believes he can easily change the whole scenario and become the strongest person. Within this game forgotten by God, he has already completed countless main and side quests, considering himself a veteran of expert level, capable of mastering and doing whatever he wants in the game, because he knows every inch of the game in every different area, which is enough to dominate everything. One single question remains in the protagonist's mind: why did he enter the game as the prince? Fortunately, as long as he still has air in his lungs, he will always find a way to escape and become even better. Another notification appears saying that the selection of the first destiny has just begun. This makes the main character even more excited because this is the beginning of his new life, just as his second life had been promised. Looking at the message, he realizes it has finally started. This is the first major choice in the entire game, and it is to choose a class system called Destiny Cards to determine his fighting style. The class selection is made randomly, and it will determine the character's initial traits. The randomness also means that if he isn't very lucky, he might draw a card that won't help him escape this entire crisis. This is a very tense moment because he never imagined that one day his destiny would be chosen by random cards. He shouts, saying that even if he goes to heaven or hell, he's determined to pull the best card. Before pulling, he closes his eyes and begins to beg for a good card, putting all his energy and dedication into it. Taking a deep breath, he reflects that at least one of the 3 cards is guaranteed to be Class B. However, if the cards he draws are nothing but trash, the game will be over before it even starts. Fortunately, the game is friendly to new players, and the boy isn't asking for anything big, just one chance. Rushing to select the class, he keeps saying that he just needs something useful, any S-rank class. In truth, being an expert at the game, any S-rank fighting style would work. With the 3 cards in his hands, he reflects that they will determine his destiny. The first card he pulls is a Class D actor, which is terrible for escaping a situation like this. His hope was in the second card, but unfortunately, he draws his Slave Gladiator of rank F. The cards he pulled are terrible and won't save him from this situation, which frustrates the boy a lot. Desperate, he looks at the cards and wonders where the beginner-friendly features went, since the game is incredibly difficult from the start. Fortunately, there's still one last card left, and this is his final hope. The boy's entire life depends on luck. As soon as he touches the card, a prismatic effect begins, impressing the boy and making him excited. Luckily, he got incredibly lucky, and the card he drew was an Archmage of X rank. A colorful message appears saying that the Archmage has appeared in the Destiny cards. Seeing this card makes the boy extremely excited, since now he can escape this situation, getting absurdly lucky to draw something good right at the start. The boy is very happy because he got a rare card, drawing the Archmage, one of the most powerful, even at the end of the game. This kind of card only has a 0.01% chance of appearing, and the boy never expected to get something like that this time. With the cards in hand, he begins to reflect on what he's going to do from now on and what his plan will be to defeat his enemies. Time remains frozen due to his power, and the Pig Prince stays in the same position, about to be defeated. Still inside his mind, the main character thinks things are different because he's not being treated as a player, but as an NPC. Because even though he transmigrated into the chubby body, it's still the prince of a magical empire. And since he has magical blood running through his veins, maybe it influenced the Destiny card selection. But that's a good thing, and the boy is grateful for having such incredible luck. Looking at the card, he says without hesitation that he's going to use the class he unlocked. However, before selecting the class, he pauses, thinking about something that caught his attention. Looking at his character's body, he realizes that even with a good class, the assassin's sword could kill him at any moment. Tied up with ropes, he has less than a second to react and save his own life. The problem with choosing the Archmage class is that it requires using magic, and first he has to gather all the mana around him. Gathering magic in a moment this tense will be a very difficult, almost impossible task. And right after gathering the magic, he'll have to cast a long spell. And thinking through all this, he realizes it'll take too long and he won't be able to dodge the sword strike. Unfortunately, if he chooses this class, his fate will be sealed, and not in a good way. Sadly, the boy realizes that he can't pick the best card he has and must decide which of the 2 worst ones to use. He must quickly come up with a smart way to escape this whole crisis. Unfortunately, his only chance to survive is to throw away the Archmage card, wasting its potential. Worried about his life, the boy starts to tense up, wondering why this card had to show up at a time like this. Frustrated, he doesn't give up and keeps thinking about how he's going to survive because he's waited his entire life for a chance like this. On the verge of tears, he reflects that this game is driving him insane, and the only possibility now is to choose one of the newbie cards. What's left now is to choose one of the trash cards with rank D or F. He has to think about which one is better in this situation. Extremely tense, the boy realizes that if he makes the wrong choice, he'll die, go to heaven, and he absolutely cannot make a mistake. Creating a heavy tension over the moment, the main character draws the Destiny card he decided on. To everyone's surprise, the chosen card was the F rank one called Slave Gladiator. He's an expert in this game and believes that even with a bad card like this, he can still survive the situation. A message appears stating that the F rank Destiny card has been assigned to the chubby prince. Unfortunately, once a card is chosen, the other 2 vanish, and even though he held an amazing card in his hands, it's lost in the process. The Archmage card with unimaginable power begins to dissolve slowly in a very sad way. With a very sad expression, the protagonist tells himself that he will find that Archmage card again in the future. Feeling very down after losing the best card he had ever gotten, a message appears in the sky. Then it's announced that in 5 seconds the game will resume and there will be no more pauses. As the countdown ticks, determined, the boy decides that he will face it calmly and escape the situation. In the final seconds before returning to the game, he asks himself why he ended up possessing the body of the Pig Prince. And even if he's not the main character, he's determined to take advantage of whatever he can to survive and do his best in this second chance at life. Even if the boy is a side character, he'll do the best he can with the playable character he received. He keeps thinking that in the original story, his character's head was cut off, but this time it will be a different version, with the MC controlling everything. Because the 2 are different people, and the boy is sure he'll give it his all. The problem is that he spent the last few seconds reflecting and forgot to figure out how to use his abilities. In a very tense moment with only 2 seconds left, he starts trying to figure out how to activate his skills to actually survive. Unfortunately, there's no more time to discover which buttons are the correct ones to press. Sweet and cold, the MC starts to realize he might not be able to survive this whole situation. The match begins and the card has been selected. Time starts flowing again and the entire story begins to unfold. Once again, the prince is now controlled by the player, who from now on will make all his decisions. Fortunately, in the very last millisecond, he remembers the skill buttons and activates them, hopefully enough to save him from this whole situation. The hooded man is shocked as his target survived the powerful sword strike, something that shouldn't have happened. Extremely surprised, the old man starts wondering what's happening with his blade. Fortunately, the activated skills from the slave class managed to create chains that held the sword at the last second, saving the heir to the throne. All the assassins are left speechless, as the last thing they expected was for their target to survive. Desperate, the pig starts trying to free himself from the ropes binding him to escape the enemies. Becoming very impatient, the leader of the assassins asks his target how he could possibly be alive after nearly being struck by a sword. A message appears on the screen showing that another skill has been successfully activated, and maybe this one can free the chubby prince. Luckily, the slave gladiator had a single defensive ability that turned out to be useful in this situation. The ability description states that if the body is restrained, it's possible to avoid one enemy strike per day. In this case, being tied up with a sword near his head, the archmage's skills wouldn't have been helpful at all. And even though it's terrible, the gladiator's abilities are far more useful to save someone in this situation than the mage's. Having survived the situation, the boy's body is still in a lot of pain, and he's in disbelief that he actually made it through. With a clear objective in mind, the assassins begin to advance, still wanting to take down the hare. Unfortunately, that ability can only be used once per day, which means the next strike will send the man's head flying. What remains for the MC is to pause and think, because he knows everything about this game, even the darkest secrets, and can use that to his advantage. He even knows the name of the old man, who was once a battle priest and believes in Yahello, the god of vengeance. The rest of his followers are fanatics who also believe in that crazy god. Knowing all of this, the chubby prince comes up with a plan, thinking of using their fanaticism to his advantage. Then he shouts the name Bemerlo de Mark out loud and curses him in front of everyone. Upon hearing his name, the battle priest is stunned, wondering how the prince could know such information. Then, following the plan, the protagonist keeps insulting them, leaving them speechless and sweating nervously. Using their fanaticism, he asks the men if they don't recognize their own master when he's using someone else's body. This leaves them shocked, wondering if the one in front of them is truly the god they follow. Standing up and continuing the act, the prince claims that he is, in fact, Yahello. Walking among all the hooded figures, he says he is the master of everyone there as they are his followers. As he continues speaking, he reflects to himself pleased because he didn't know he could come up with such a clever plan. Excited, he ends by saying that the hooded ones must follow him and worship him wherever he goes. Being a great liar, he declares that he must be praised, for he is the god of vengeance. From this moment on, the character will become the god of vengeance, the very god that these people worship in the game. And they cannot question this fact, being forced to believe that the man in front of them is Yahello himself. Once again, he shouts, asking if his followers have the courage to point swords at the god they follow. This leaves them speechless, because if the man really is who they believe, it would be a grave mistake. The three henchmen begin looking at each other, unsure of what to do next, as they might be facing either salvation or doom. However, it doesn't take an expert to notice the lie, and this is clear from the expressions on the assassins' faces. They don't believe him. Noticing this begins to panic the boy, who immediately starts sweating cold, realizing he must quickly come up with a way to save himself. Mockingly, the old man doesn't believe that a god would descend into such a weak and ridiculous body. His last hope is to keep lying. So the chubby prince keeps threatening his followers, saying it's impossible to know what form he'll take when he comes to Earth. He continues to threaten the men in increasingly graphic and violent ways, trying to prove that he really is the god of vengeance. Saying all these things makes him seem like a madman, and that's not his true nature, but he has to do it to survive. And it doesn't matter if the boy is putting on an over-the-top performance inside the game. This god is supposed to be that kind of person. According to the original lore, there are 12 gods in this world, each with different forms. And it's said that all 12 behave like bullies who love interfering in the mortal world in all kinds of ways. Which is funny, because the name of the game is World Forgotten by God, and apparently there are 12 gods who rule everything. However, the boy doesn't have time to explain why that is, because his head might be cut off in a few minutes. Continuing the performance, he says they should be grateful because he descended into the mortal world just to see them, and if it were any other god, that would have been a problem. Among all the gods, Yahello is the one who interferes the most in the world, because he loves vengeance and watches every kind of war, and one of his favorite ways to intervene is through personal conflict or national warfare. Fortunately, the developer helped the MC in this case by placing him in a good scenario to act in. Finally, the leader becomes convinced and starts apologizing, realizing it was a huge mistake to insult the chubby prince. Seeing this scene makes the prince happy, as he's successfully convincing everyone he's someone he's not, and this will secure his survival. Then, still not 100% convinced, the assassin asks that if the man really is their god, he should bless his followers. Basically, what they're asking for is proof that he is truly who he claims to be. So the boy needs to figure out a way out of this tense situation. He reflects on how the original god would react to such a request, and realizes that God would never do something like give blessings. Following the plan, he begins saying that he'll bless them from the bottom of his merciful heart. Finally, he starts acting as he should, addressing the assassin leader directly. He calls attention to the golden statue that was dedicated to him last week, complaining in a very rude way that the object was only made of gold and could have had much more. This leaves the old man speechless, embarrassed because his offering is being criticized. Getting deeper into character, he yells once again at his followers, asking if they think they can deceive him with such pitiful gifts. From a player's point of view, the NPCs must really believe that their god has descended to Earth and is speaking live. He adds that if even his priest is like this, he wonders what the rest of his followers must be like, probably gullible enough to follow another god. The man becomes more and more embarrassed and starts sweating nervously, feeling punished and saying he was just trying to do his best. But the argument given is that true faith is shown through actions, not words. And in truth, what the hare is really saying is that the offerings he expects from now on should be pure money. He claims that lots of money is the greatest proof that they truly believe in this faith. The assassins feel ashamed because their master is being scolded, thinking it's ridiculous to have given only a simple statue. Once again, the blonde boy threatens his follower, asking if he wants him to spill all the secrets he knows. The boy knows every detail, having completed every quest in the game, and is hopeful he'll manage to escape. Finally, after a long conversation, the old man is convinced and orders his followers to release the chubby prince. A message appears showing that the boy has completed his first quest, making him happy because he has finally escaped the crisis. Approaching, the old man says he's truly ashamed for not recognizing his god right away. Delivering the final blow in this whole mission, the boy says he's sore all over because of the men, calling it an outrage and telling them to bite their tongues. This is just a bluff that may or may not work, but the priest doesn't say anything, seemingly convinced to carry out this mission for real. The assassins begin to argue among themselves about whether they should obey or not, in case Adolem really is standing before them. They also comment that he has possessed the prince with the worst public reputation, being called a pig due to his bad image. But after a few seconds, they start to reflect that maybe it's in the pig's nature to act this way. This makes the blonde boy nervous, possibly because they're slowly uncovering his plan or maybe just making him sweat out of fear. Getting closer, the leader speaks to his god, saying he's honored to finally meet him in person. While the man asks questions, the MC reflects that he only survived thanks to the poor reputation of the character. He explains that if the altar sacrifices had been better, the borrowed body would have been stronger and more majestic. And all of that is the followers' fault, saying that if they had given better gifts, things would have been different. A very important question is asked in the circle: what made the god descend to Earth? Because he hasn't revealed himself much lately, and that question hits the boy like a dagger to the chest. It also sparks the priest's curiosity, wondering if his master has something urgent to do in the world. Unfortunately, the assassin doesn't believe the protagonist's story at all, but still sees potential use for him in the future. Getting back into character, the boy asks if he really has to list all the reasons one by one and says he shouldn't have to explain himself. He questions if they're doubting his credibility now, and to prove it, he says he'll have to take his pants off. Fortunately, Yahello acts just like that. So everything is consistent with the character, and the performance once again makes his follower apologize. It's easy to see the man is only playing along with the MC's story to calm his subordinates down. But that's the boy's original plan, to get everyone to relax so he can find a chance to escape. Something catches the prince's attention, making him feel uneasy about the whole situation. One of the followers hasn't spoken a word and remains in the back silently watching the entire scene unfold. It's believed that the masked man is, in fact, the main character of the game, just waiting for the right moment to act. And this makes him uncomfortable, wondering who the man is, because in this game, the protagonist has no fixed backstory. So perhaps he doesn't belong to any of the main factions. And in this world, there are three major groups. The first is the Baltic Magic Empire, which the Pig Prince belongs to. The second is the Revolutionary Army, which is always in conflict with the Empire. And finally, there's the exotic and intriguing Council of the Five Beast Tribes. It's known in the game's lore that the Empire and the Revolutionary Army are always on bad terms. The third prince's trip to heaven, caused by the Revolutionary Army, is a direct message to the Emperor. After recalling all the game's story, the MC realizes the people in front of him won't give up on sending him to heaven, because they need to send a message to the Emperor. So he begins to rack his brain, trying to figure out a way to survive this. He needs to come up with something fast, because there's no way the Revolutionary Army would choose to keep the prince alive. In all this tension, the MC reflects that he played his best card to save his life, but doesn't seem to have worked, because it's obvious the assassins still want to take the character down. With no hope left, the boy has to think quickly about how to save the Pig Prince. Originally, the hare was destined to go to heaven, but thanks to the protagonist, his life has been spared. And using his knowledge and cleverness, he's already managed to escape several crises in just these few minutes of life. Finally, the boy realizes that this is exactly the behavior of a game's protagonist, and that makes him happy. He notices that he has finally awakened in the body of a main character, and this was the opportunity he had waited for his entire life. However, in the game, the crisis still continues, and the old man, now growing impatient, asks what the chubby prince just said. He replies that it's nothing, just that the connection with this mortal body experienced a slight momentary interference. The moment is tense, and it's hard to say whether he'll survive or not, but the boy is willing to give it his all to get through this bad situation. Already at rock bottom, it's impossible for things to get worse, so the hare decides to go all in on his role, determined to make it work. He declares loudly that from now on, the third prince, Porco, will be his main apostle, and he orders that no one lay a finger on him, surprising all the assassins, since it's such a strange choice. He then claims something even more absurd, that in the future, the chubby one will join the Revolutionary Army. Upon hearing this, all his disciples are stunned and exchange glances, trying to make sense of this new decision as it goes against the faction's core beliefs. The game notifies a change in faction, and according to the system, if he ascends to the heavens now, it will count as a team loss. Outside the game, the young man is thrilled, having cleverly outmaneuvered the issue, and mocks the situation. Because no matter how fanatical they are, they still fear the penalty and the severe punishment that would follow. With his pieces finally on the board, the schemer can relax for a bit, knowing his life is secured for now. Suddenly, the leader of these occultists bursts into laughter, as if he had something in mind and hadn't fallen for this silly little game. Once again, this makes the boy nervous, questioning why this is happening, since he thought he had the upper hand. In a wicked and authoritarian tone, the old man asks if he can truly trust the word of the suffering individual. Approaching aggressively, he claims that the god of vengeance would never lie, making the MC wonder if he said something wrong. He says it's hard to believe that the blood of the royal family would one day join the revolutionary army. And now, out of nowhere, their own god declares that the third heir prince will join their faction. Hoping the boy will slip up, he says they'll take him to the army's headquarters within Orax's capital, and also to the cathedral. The boy panics, realizing he's about to be taken to the revolutionary army's headquarters, the very group that has long sought to usurp the empire. In other words, he'll be deep in enemy territory, and that's incredibly dangerous for his life. As the old man says he'll notify the bishop of Aelem's arrival, the boy grows anxious, knowing the area is extremely perilous, full of assassins. In the middle of it all, he realizes he'll be in serious trouble if he ends up at the cathedral, since it's a high difficulty zone in the game. If the archbishop finds him, everything he's said until now will be exposed as a lie. If that truly happens, the assassins will once again turn on the MC, trying to send him to the heavens for real this time. The thought of this terrifies the boy, fearing he'll be tied up again and have his life threatened. Back in the present, the leader tells his henchmen to prepare the boy's coffin, as if he's willingly stepping into the afterlife. Trying to avoid going to the Empire, he begins to question how to handle the situation. Maybe threatening them in the style of the god of vengeance won't work anymore. The thought arises, what will happen if he does end up in the Empire? Once in the Empire, people will discover everything is a lie, and the followers of the god of vengeance will want to defeat him for such heresy. It's a horrible possibility, giving chills to the chubby one who definitely doesn't want to ascend to the heavens just yet, and that terrifies him. His mind drifts into all the possible futures, prompting a follower to ask if he's feeling okay. Growing increasingly anxious, he begins to wonder if a rescue team might come. After all, he is the crown prince and still important. The only problem is that inside the Empire there's an NPC who also wants Golosin dead. In fact, it was this very man who incited the revolutionary army to kidnap the third prince and send him to the heavens. His only option is to head into enemy territory, because returning to the Empire would also mean being attacked from all sides. After some time, the old man informs his god that the carriage is ready to take him to revolutionary army territory. Even if it's his best shot at survival, the slightest mistake will expose his secret. As he begins to step into the carriage, a plan forms in the MC's mind, and he starts to put it into action. Pretending to be angry, he asks what kind of carriage this is, refusing to enter such a filthy space. Continuing the performance, he tells his follower to spend a bit more on the carriage next time, insulting him as a cheap priest. Seeing the boy calmly enter the carriage, even while cursing everyone, makes the old man start to suspect that he really is his god. Noticing the man's surprised expression, the MC asks why he looks so shocked. Then he shouts for all to hear that the third prince will abandon the Empire and head to the revolutionary army's headquarters. This surprises everyone, because if the boy weren't the god of vengeance, he would be terrified of going to the headquarters. He repeats once more, cheerfully, that they are to take the prince to the capital. The capital is called Orax, a large city surrounded by walls and beautiful buildings. He reflects that after making this decision, returning to the Empire would only lead to inevitable defeat. Being very clever, he believes that on the way to the capital, he'll have a great opportunity to grow and improve. Loving challenges, he says it doesn't matter that the place he's going is very difficult. It's not a big problem. He just needs to focus on solving it. Getting excited, he believes this is just a phase of a game, and in truth, the hero is a professional player, and he's determined to step into enemy territory, even if it's hard, as the denial around the prince keeps growing. Finally, he orders the assassins to protect the chubby one's body so he doesn't get hurt during a trip. He commands them to hurry up and prepare some rice and high-quality alcohol to eat and drink on the journey. This irritates the leader, who believes using those supplies for that is a big waste. The blonde one argues that using those supplies will help him preach and deliver divine revelations to his followers. That's enough to make the younger assassins bow and believe his words. He makes a prophecy that within the next 15 days, something will happen that will cause many people in Orax to ascend to the heavens. This shocks everyone, especially the younger ones, as they weren't expecting such a major tragedy in their capital. But he promises that by using the prince's body, he will help prevent this catastrophic event. He argues that the next step is to fulfill a prophecy, which slightly irritates the old man. This is all part of the boy's plan to save his life, as now his men have no choice but to keep the pig alive and take him to the headquarters. Along the way, the prince ate the best and tastiest food available. Being a glutton, he compliments the venison, saying it tastes amazing, eating several servings in a row. He praises the tired followers, saying they're all great at grilling meat and could open a barbecue restaurant. He suggests they open a restaurant called Priest of Vengeance when they reach Orax's capital. All this chatter annoys the old man, who tells him to eat in silence, as no one can stand the blonde spouting nonsense throughout the journey. Finally, he says he can't skip alcohol when having such a great meal and pulls out a bottle with a snake inside. Upon opening it, he explains that this is the famous drink that gets you dizzy with a single sip and burns your throat. He didn't stop drinking during the entire trip, downing all the alcohol he had, even if it's bad for his health and excess. His high alcohol tolerance supports his lie that he's truly the god of vengeance who loves to drink, impressing his apostles. Reflecting, he jokes that maybe his last words at the time of his execution will be, "I want to drink the assassin's finest liquor." Drunk, he keeps talking nonsense, irritating everyone, prompting the old man to tell him to shut up once more. Then the MC says the leader can't handle liquor, which is why he's so grumpy, and that he's easy to read when he's annoyed. He compliments today's menu, saying it's been a long time since he's eaten something so delicious. He says the freshly hunted venison paired with spicy seasonings is what makes the food so good. He says it's been ages since he's eaten such fresh lamb, and he's tired of looking at bits of dry food. The journey lasted 3 days and 3 nights, a very exhausting trip until they reached the capital. During the journey, the boy thought he was going to die as the old man was on his tail the whole time, acting suspiciously. It's known that in the game, Jalosin only has scenes where he eats and nothing else. All his days were filled with parties, drinks, and extravagance. Additionally, there's an even worse issue on the character sheet the hero is checking right now. The character's stats aren't that great. One thing that stands out is his endurance, which is at -9. It's truly impressive that this guy has survived until now with such low endurance. In the game, even a newborn has higher endurance than the prince, usually starting with a stat of 12. The prince's health is dropping and he might pass on before reaching his destination. However, the leader of the assassins says he can't give the boy a healing potion, since they're in the middle of a chase and it could be an important item later. So all the boy can do is rely on the skill of his protectors and hope his health doesn't drop too quickly. But the man sets a condition. He'll hand over the potion if the boy proves useful in the fight against their pursuers. Opening the menu interface, he speaks with Barmilo and says he has a favor to ask. Upon hearing this, Barmilo widens his eyes, since having a favor owed by a god is something very valuable to cash in later. The favor is bizarre. He asks the man to hit his backside for some reason no one understands. Hearing this leaves the man speechless, and he accidentally drops the potion, so shocked that he loses touch with reality. Snapping back a moment later, he asks what his master just said again, not believing his ears. However, the boy stands by his request and repeats it, once again asking the man to hit his backside, even presenting it in full view for everyone. The old man, stunned, asks what the prince is trying to do, wondering if he's gone mad from the exhaustion of the journey. Watching all of this leaves all the followers stunned, as none of them ever imagined seeing the heir to the throne's private parts in this way. Irritated that they're not following his request, he shouts and asks if they're really going to disobey the order of a god. After activating the God of Vengeance mode, he manages to convince the man to carry out the request, which unfolds in the ridiculous scene that follows. Upon receiving the slaps, a skill activates and his stamina starts to be restored. After being slapped on the backside, the boy feels rejuvenated and tells everyone that he's feeling much better now. This happens because the Slag's ability grants a boost from masochistic affinity. When taking non-fatal damage, the body's resilience increases. After making the requests, the priest reflects that he always knew Aeolon was crazy, but didn't know he had such odd tastes. When he says it doesn't matter what preferences the god has, the boy replies that there's a misunderstanding in this situation. The Gladiator's Fate card is quite strange, having affinity with things that involve bodily pain. The class is so unusual that all of its exclusive abilities are suited for people with peculiar preferences. After some time, the cooldown ends and the ability can be used again to restore the MC's resilience. Then, following his master's orders, the man hits him again, this time catching him by surprise. The boy gets annoyed, saying he needed more time to brace for the incoming damage, and asks why a priest is hitting him harder than before. After striking inappropriate areas, the man begins to feel a refreshing sensation throughout his own body. After that, all the followers want a chance to slap the master's backside to feel this supposed bodily rejuvenation. Everyone begins to compete to see who gets to go next, which irritates the blonde, who demands everyone's attention to say something important. The situation spirals so far out of control that one of the followers grabs sticks to do a proper job. Frightened by the fanaticism of these people, the chubby one reflects and begs them to stop, calling them all crazy. Returning to a more serious tone, the problem with the silent man remains. It's strange that he's watching all of this without doing anything. Additionally, on this particular day, the masked man is staring with an even more mysterious expression. The ridiculous scene continues and becomes even more elaborate, as they now use ropes and vines to inflict more non-lethal damage. As he takes the hits, the ability activates again, restoring his stamina and increasing his resilience. And once again, the masked man stays silent, observing everything, with a quiet but menacing aura around him. After suffering many blows, which turn into a form of harsh training, the character's endurance increases to 37. Time passes, and the boy can no longer feel his backside, but his companions refuse to stop hitting him. Then, around the campfire, the leader turns to his master and jokes that his body still looks like that of a baby pig. The boy jokes back and reflects that it's actually fun to be around the fire with companions, talking and eating all night long. Even though these men originally came to defeat him and they're not exactly on the same side, it's still kind of enjoyable. Some time passes and the priest calls the third prince's attention, as he has something on his mind he wants to say. Suddenly, with a very worried expression, he says there's a big problem unfolding. The plan has fallen apart because he hadn't expected to keep the boy alive or for the heir to become an apostle Aeolum. He adds that the original idea was to leave the blonde's body somewhere after sending him to the heavens in a very disgusting way. But now, no matter how hard the Empire searches, they won't find any body in the forests. And that's concerning because the client who ordered the prince to be captured and defeated must be furious. It's clear that the noble from the Empire who gave the mission is extremely angry, as he apparently feels betrayed. Being clever, the boy asks if that means a search party must be getting close. Two excellent warriors from the kingdom are on the prince's trail, skilled and very powerful. They're probably hunting for the blonde, and maybe the escape route has already been blocked by now. Worried, the MC asks if they think these warriors will leave them alone since their final destination is the teleportation gate to Orax. Tomorrow, they're expected to reach the gate, which leaves the followers concerned as they don't know if they'll be able to handle the warriors. A battle will be inevitable if the search party arrives faster than the army. Thinking ahead, he asks the old man who exactly planned to take down the crown prince because he doesn't believe it was the king. This question catches the man off guard, leaving him speechless since he doesn't want to reveal the client. It goes against mercenary ethics. Seeing the priest's hesitation, the boy asks him to speak as he'll find out one way or another eventually. It is then revealed that the one who ordered the whole mission is the minister of the imperial palace, a man deeply focused on his goals. Upon hearing this, the pig remarks that if it really is the minister, and this man controls all the events inside the imperial palace. At that very moment, the minister is fuming at the mercenaries he hired, shocked that they failed to complete the mission. His name is Viscount Zarek Morse, an important member of the royal family. The Viscount is allying with the revolutionary army to pursue his goals and perhaps expand his influence. The teleportation portal to the capital is located far away, deep in the forest, and it's hard to reach for anyone unfamiliar with the terrain. The blonde spends a few seconds thinking after hearing and confirming that the client was indeed who he suspected. It's clear that he's not surprised to learn it really was a minister. He had already considered that possibility. He explains that he knows a thing or two about palace politics, and it would make the most sense if it really was Morse. There was a time when the Empire fought a war to control the northeastern region, a very brutal battle. In that conflict, the minister's ancestors came from the Khan tribe in the northeast. And since ancient times, this tribe had a very close relationship with the revolutionary army. The man's likely plan is to ally with the army to regain control of the territory lost during the war with the Empire. The leader is impressed upon hearing his master's theory, as it perfectly matches the scenario. The minister may be trying to avenge his ancestors. So the MC jokes that he'll get embarrassed if they praise him too much, since he could tell from the guy's face that he was amazed. However, the tribe is no longer interested in the region they lost, which could mean the Viscount is a double agent. But the boy isn't sure and can't confirm that, though the player behind it knows all the scenarios. And within the game's story, after Porco's defeat, the minister gained great power and influence. He managed to accomplish all of his goals over time after completing the contract. The apostle is very impressed by everything the boy just said, as he didn't think the prince paid such close attention to the world. He remarks that most rumors about him were usually nonsense or exaggerated stories. From now on, with his influence, things will slowly start to stray from the original story, and many new scenarios will emerge that weren't part of the game's original lore. Soon, events that were never meant to happen will be waiting to unfold. After the whole conversation, the pape reflects that the Viscount probably has almost everything ready for his plan to succeed. And in the game, he was the kind of person who always used his brain instead of brute force. Most likely, being so clever, he already knows the escape route the revolutionary army men are taking. In fact, in the original story, the third prince was captured in the imperial hunting grounds. And after that, the group kept moving until they reached the eastern region. And if that's really the case, the army closest to blocking their path consists of strong individuals. Realizing this, the boy becomes very worried, thinking this is the end, since he doesn't believe they can defeat the incoming squad. Then he screams in fear, realizing he's about to encounter one of the strongest NPCs in the game. The NPC is one of the 3 magical swords of the Empire, the night market Alon Lloyd. Concerned, they decide to increase their travel speed to reach the gate as soon as possible and try to outrun the search party. Unfortunately, Bamerlo doesn't know yet, but if they go straight to the gate, they'll all be easily defeated. Trying to save everyone, he says they can't do that, and it would be terrible if there were a security team guarding the gate. The protagonist's situation is troubling, with a fierce search party behind him and one of the kingdom's most powerful individuals ahead. But as a specialist in this game, he has to find a way to survive this crisis. So he tells everyone to wait one more day. This surprises the old man, as he wasn't expecting to stay another day in this place. And finally, the masked man speaks, saying the boy's plan is to wait for the bear and the nightingale. This surprises the chubby one, who can't believe the mysterious man finally spoke. After all, he hadn't said a single word in the last 3 days, making him a strong candidate for being the protagonist of the game. The masked man finally says his first words since the beginning of the journey, which greatly surprises everyone. Aware of the situation, he asks the prince if the intention is to wait for the rescue team to arrive and take him away. Approaching in an intimidating manner, he demands an answer, asking if his theory is wrong. This whole situation makes the MC tense, wondering what's wrong with this guy. The simple fact that the boy remained silent made the mysterious man believe he got it right. He finally reveals his true colors and says that if the boy doesn't speak, he'll use his sword to force an answer out of him. Trying to save himself, the blonde says he doesn't talk to strangers, and that's why he didn't respond, and there's no need to resort to violence for that. This irritates the man, who almost starts a fight in the heat of the moment, nearly doing something reckless. Continuing his argument, the pig asks why he should talk to someone who won't even show his face. Before the fight escalates, the leader steps in and tells them to stop before things spiral out of control and one of them gets seriously hurt. Having a naturally combative personality, the prince says they were just getting to the interesting part of the whole mess. Trying to calm things down, the priest apologizes for everything and finally introduces the masked man. His name is Erbil. However, this name surprises the boy because he's never seen this man before, which is strange given his deep knowledge of the game. And no matter how insignificant, he knows the name of every faction in this game because he was obsessed with it. Trying to satisfy his curiosity, he asks what Erbil's relationship is with the Church of Vengeance and whether he might be a priest. In truth, Erbil isn't a priest, but a companion of the group, which makes the protagonist ask if the man is a mercenary. Approaching once again in an intimidating way, he asks what would happen if he were a mercenary. In the original game, a player can choose a faction, and it's also possible to betray that choice and join other factions. In other words, people have the privilege of traveling the world while switching allegiances, just like a mercenary. And that's exactly what this man is doing now, going from one place to another. Thinking about this makes the boy even more anxious, since this mysterious character seems to have player-like privileges, and is definitely not just a regular NPC. So he argues that now they know his name and asks the pig to finally answer his questions so they can understand the entire situation. However, the boy is trapped in his thoughts, reflecting that maybe the mysterious one is another player who was also transmigrated into this server. Bluntly, he asks once again whether the king's guards are currently searching for the prince at this very moment. If the man isn't just a mere NPC, things will get more complicated because originally the blonde was supposed to collect all the items a player could acquire. Growing impatient and increasingly irritated, he pressures the MC to give him answers, since he's getting worried about the approach of a rival team. Being very familiar with the game, he says that the bear is known by another name within the kingdom's territory. His name is Karl Silem, and he's a 6-star warrior who follows others like a hidden shadow. People say it's like he's a string of pearls around a pig's neck. Finally finishing the explanation, the masked one says he has a lot of respect for that warrior. He ignorantly asks why someone like that would be trapped in the role of a prince, calling it a huge waste of talent. When the MC starts complaining about the criticism, a blade is pointed at his face as a threat for those odd reactions. Then the man warns the pig not to try any cheap tricks, because he's not going to fall for them. With a sharp sword aimed at him, he says that if the boy is trying to wait for a rescue team, he'll cut him down right now. And the reason he wants to send the boy to the heavens is that he'll never let anyone who annoys him live. Seeing the entire scene unfold, the hero reflects that this is different from an NPC. It's the kind of reaction you'd expect from a player. Trying to escape the pressure, the boy slips back into character and asks if the masked man is the one who makes all the decisions here. Then he shouts, saying that it's the priest who should be giving orders, diminishing the man's authority by calling him a simple mercenary. The way the main character talks catches his rival completely off guard because no one speaks like that in this world's era. Continuing, the blonde turns to the priest and asks if he was wrong in thinking that the priest is the one in charge around here. Under pressure, the old man says that the priest of vengeance is indeed the one who determines the fate of the third prince. This excites the chubby one, who praises his priest and says he believed in him the entire time. However, contradicting everything, the elder says he actually agrees with the mercenary's point of view in this situation. He explains that if they stay here, the guards will arrive quickly, and their team will be used as bait for the prince. Seeing that the situation is worsening with each passing second, the hare asks everyone to calm down and admits that they truly are being followed. The two approaching are a warrior and a witch, both very powerful and known throughout the world. But he argues that the person guarding the gate might be someone far more dangerous than the two in that team. He says that only a few people in the kingdom have enough skill to be hired for a mission as important as rescuing the king's son. This completely surprises the assassin's leader, who wasn't expecting such a major challenge just to reach the capital. The fame of Mark Alon Lloyd is so great that even the assassins know of him, as he's the head of the special forces. So the boy argues that there's no way to fight against Lloyd, since he's far too powerful. This man is one of the top 3 magical warriors of the Empire, and one of the strongest NPCs in the entire game. No exaggeration, in-game he had 9 stars as a swordsman, which in player terms means he had reached level 90. Worried about the entire mission, the old man asks how this happened and why, of all people, this dangerous man showed up. Then mockingly, he asks the masked man if he really believes he could win a solo battle against Marcus Lloyd. This leaves him speechless, because he probably can't, and that causes unease in the group. To everyone's shock, the boy adds and asks what would happen if all the priests team up to fight. Fearing for his life, he says that if they all want to go to the heavens, they're free to head toward the gate on their own. Hearing all of this, the boy begins to feel worried, realizing that, in truth, the Empire's sword is already on his trail. And this reaction surprises him because he expected the man to deny all these claims and dismiss it as nonsense. It's clear the masked man is becoming more and more worried, saying that continuing on this path would be throwing their lives away. Seeing the whole scene makes the boy curious, as suddenly his rival seemed frightened. Preparing for the long journey, the old man asks if it's true that the warriors are blocking the gate, what suggestion the MC has. Since there's no way to get past the rivals head-on, they need to think of a way to work around the situation. Mockingly, the boy asks what happened to everyone. Just a second ago, they were doubting his suggestions, and now they've suddenly changed their tune. Watching his master mock everyone's attitude irritates the leader, who coughs in an attempt to change the subject. However, this only irritates the boy even more, who says he can cough too, and does so repeatedly. As they make excuses for the situation, the chubby one says that won't fix anything. Hearing these words surprises the old man, since things like that didn't exist in this world or in the game. But finally, the blonde begins to show his claws, saying that if they really feel bad about the situation, they need to show true sincerity. That sincerity will be shown through a promise involving collecting an item for the protagonist. However, the boy says that before he reveals what item he needs, the man must promise first. Additionally, he wants to be protected at any cost, and asks them to swear in the name of the god of vengeance. His argument is that if they can't trust the third prince, then they might as well all go to a better place. And they will go to a better place, especially his followers, who will end up fighting the Empire's sword. From now on, he asks that everyone follow what he says, and they'll gain a safe passage straight to Orax. To make everyone follow his word, he starts the oath circle, speaking first out loud. The masked man watches all of this with a look of contempt, clearly not buying into the protagonist's speech. The followers also wear strange expressions, as the entire scene is confusing, and they're unsure what to do next. Returning to the main topic, the old man says things are going in the wrong direction, but he'll follow whatever the prince says, though if things go south, he expects the god himself to handle it. After that, the blonde gets excited about convincing the leader and says there's nothing more to be discussed. Wasting no time, he begins moving in the direction he wants, asking everyone to follow him. Suddenly stopping, he shouts out loud, asking if Carl's is here. Everyone freezes, listening to the MC shouting to draw the warriors' attention. Then they finally understand and grow alarmed, wondering if she's really around and afraid of being sent to a better place. Shouting again, and he urges them to hurry up and come out of the shadows. Finally, after some yelling, the two appear, and their names are Nightingale and the Bear. Unfortunately, it was the wrong moment, and the girl wonders why this happened. She had been hiding, waiting for the perfect opportunity to act. Apparently, they had been tracking the group for 3 days. That's how the chubby one knew they'd be here. The warrior asks why His Highness did this. If he had held out a bit longer, they would have successfully ambushed the kidnappers. However, the boy doesn't want to return to the Empire and mocks her, telling Lloyd not to say cruel things because she's scaring everyone. In truth, at this moment in the game's story, the girl's name is Cylon, not Lloyd, and the MC made a mistake in forgetting that. Cheerfully, the blonde explains that Marcus Lloyd is a close friend of her father. He's also known as the Midnight Warrior. Dramatically, Cylon says that even though everything is going wrong, she's happy the prince is safe. Currently, the girl serves as the heir's escort guard, but soon she'll leave the Empire and become commander of the Heavy Warriors. And with that, she'll receive the important title of Midnight Knight. The MC remembers this nightmare mission, which only happens in the original story after he ascends to the heavens. After discovering the secret of her birth, Salem returns to see Marquis and try to get answers. And that's why she eventually changes her surname to Lloyd, instead of keeping the one she was born with. She adopts the name of the same Marquis, who, with a cold expression, is currently guarding the main gate. That man now guarding the gate is always alert and prepared for sudden attacks, being one of the kingdom's top warriors. Trying to change the course of the story, the chubby one attempts to reveal the secret of the girl's birth to surprise her. However, before he can even finish the sentence, the girl yells at the kidnappers, ordering them to release and free His Highness. With her very sharp sword, she threatens everyone, saying that if it doesn't happen, she'll cut them all in half. Seeing the whole scene frightens her friends because no one ordered the boy to come here. He came of his own accord. Looking into the faces of his captors, and now companions, the blonde can tell exactly what they're thinking just from their expressions. While being carried by the muscular girl, the protagonist thinks that if this continues, he'll end up being taken back to the palace, and he definitely doesn't want that to happen. If he ends up returning to the kingdom somehow, all the planning to take him down will play out once again. Seeing that his companions are doing nothing, the boy feels betrayed and yells at the leader. Something suddenly catches Doloro's attention, and he turns, surprised and alert. Someone is approaching, and the assassins notice it too, becoming tense at the newcomer's arrival. Amid the forest, a redhead dressed in black appears in an intimidating and powerful manner. Her name is Irvin Sui, also known as the Red Shadow. Upon seeing her, the old man says that rumors about the girl are spreading throughout the Revolutionary Army. One rumor claims she's a 200-year-old witch who bathes in the blood of virgins to maintain her youth. Upon hearing this, the hare realizes that even with all of his cleverness, he still ended up caught in the middle of this ambush. The first time he heard about this character was in the official lore book of the GFW world. He was really excited reading about her for the first time, thinking she was incredibly powerful. On the internet, there were all kinds of speculations, and the game's official website was flooded with news about this new character. However, something happened when the girl was finally revealed to all the players. In this scenario, she transforms into a beautiful woman, which makes the boy wonder if it's really okay for the developers to mislead players using background books like that. As the woman approaches, the boy still can't understand the developer's decision to create someone like her. The redhead explains that to find the prince, she had to walk for 3 days and 3 nights through the mountains. eating only dried meat. This surprises the blonde as they did the same, and he jokes that she must be an angel, not a witch, for liking dried meat. Already very irritated and impatient, she says that the whole way there she was eager to defeat all the kidnappers. In the middle of the looming conflict, the prince asks how the rescue team managed to survive like that for 3 days. Trying to calm the situation, the chubby one says everything's fine now since they found who they were looking for. And while saying they should be relieved because he's alive and well, a sudden hand slaps him across the face. The witch is apparently furious with the blonde and gives him a hard slap across the face. That slap activates the slave warrior's masochistic skill. Completely enraged, she calls the boy a pig in front of everyone. She steps on his face and says she went through countless hardships just to save him. And now that she's here, he won't cooperate and wants to ruin the whole plan. The activated ability is his affinity for masochism, which restores his status. She then asks if the boy's head is only there to be stepped on, or if he just keeps it for decoration since it's probably empty. Going through all this humiliation causes his stamina to recover. Seeing himself in this mess, he wonders how he ended up with such a terrible disciple like the pig, which reminds the boy that in the original story, Jalosin was supposed to be Sui's disciple. But because he was so lazy, he never had a proper lesson and didn't have much talent for magic or anything related. As she prepares to hit him again, she says she wishes the pig could absorb magical concepts the way he eats food. The girl doesn't care if the boy is from the royal family or not. She's going to insult him without worrying about the consequences, which makes the chubby one think she's surprisingly good at insults for someone who's a witch. After suffering multiple kicks and blows, he lies on the ground and calls out for Barmelo. Seeing the whole scene, the leader states that no priest has the power to fight a 9-star warrior guarding the Stargate. So they begin to surround the two women very stealthily, ready to strike. As he prepares for battle, he says things are different when it's against 6-star warriors. Worried, the boy shouts, asking if they're really willing to fight, uncaring if it means they'll be sent to the heavens. Drawing their sharp swords, the old man tells the girls that if they have a better idea, they should speak up now. He explains that his friends aren't very patient and could start a fight at any moment. The blonde boy can do little at this point except hope everything resolves itself, since he doesn't have many combat skills. His only salvation is his cleverness, as he approaches the girl with a plan in mind. Then he tells her he'll go with the followers to the capital, Orax, surprising the girl. It leaves her quite curious as she doesn't understand what His Highness is planning by going to the capital. She becomes worried about the boy because she knows that place is home to the Revolutionary Army plotting a rebellion against the Empire, a hostile territory. But the MC explains that he knows all of this and made the decision on his own. He says they might not understand, but that's the path he must follow. And as the lord of both adventurers, he orders them not to follow and to leave him alone. The same is said to the witch, trying to prevent her from following the group. Suddenly, the boy apologizes, saying he's been a terrible disciple all this time. He kneels before the girl, saying he would never throw her magical teachings away. He adds that what he hopes for is that the lessons given by the redhead one day shine with the 5 colors of light, and he swears, shouting that he'll definitely win through love for magic someday. Even though what the witch taught the prince was never shown in the game. However, because of her personality, she never would have treated Jalosin as a mere burden, no matter how incompetent he was. He states he can't say when he'll become good at magic, but it's destined to happen. He says he knows the girl can't trust his words yet, but begs her to trust in her disciples just this once. This leaves the sorceress speechless, as she's never seen her students speak with such commitment. Once again, the hare pleads for her to believe in him just this one time. After a few seconds without answering, the girl wonders if Jalosin had those eyes for magic before. Her guess is that maybe it happened because he lost weight, but in truth, the boy's whole personality changed. Besides all that, he suddenly started calling her master, something he didn't do before. Before being captured, he was a selfish person who only thought about eating and didn't care about studies. Because of his tremendous fear of the redhead's powers, he never referred to her properly. His lack of skill in magic is so well known that the entire country is aware, making him the butt of jokes. And being lazy didn't help, since during study sessions, he would sleep, which led to his lack of learning in the field. In fact, even Fatty himself knows his magical ability is worse than anyone else's, which is strange because suddenly, this lazy boy is calling the girl his master. So the girl asks if her student truly wished for her teachings to reach the 5 colors of light. The full phrase is, "May the great magic reach the light of 5 colors and reflect back into your being." She argues that she thought he wasn't interested in magic, and now he knows the words of the blessing, considered the highest compliment in the Tower of Mages. She's completely shocked, asking if the boy had been pretending to be an idiot this whole time. Seeing the whole scene, the protagonist feels sad because it's not his real body that Turvan is looking at. In truth, it's the prince's. To be more precise, it's not Jalosin that the girl is seeing, but something else. What she's likely looking for is the true spirit of Jalosin, but no one knows where that is at this very moment. She comments that for the past 5 years, she's been in charge of teaching the boy. Unfortunately, the boy can't use magic properly, but maybe learning slowly will be enough. She encourages her student, saying that even if he has no talent, the things he can do are limitless. She lets the boy do as he wishes, arguing that that's all she has to say as a master. However, the warrior doesn't seem satisfied, approaching the conversation in a very angry way. Completely distraught, she says she can't believe His Highness is saying such things. She grabs the protagonist by the collar with all her strength, making him remember her presence. Suddenly, the blonde girl begins to cry, saying she believed that one day the hare would create a cause, which leaves the boy very confused as he wasn't expecting that reaction. In fact, he thought he was about to get hit. Emotional, she says she will follow the prince as a warrior wherever he goes. While crying, she says she will follow His Highness's path, wherever destiny may lead. She swears that if anyone gets in the way, they'll have to deal with Carl's sword. Finally, the boy realizes that both girls must have had high expectations for the third prince, since both had very strong personalities. And they must have been worried too, wanting to see their lord with a worthy appearance and a promising future. Unfortunately, Kim is just a player who inhabits this NPC's body and is not the real prince. Even though he isn't truly the heir, his heart warms at seeing such a moving scene. And it all feels as if Galosen's heart is still inside the body. The warrior continues to cry uncontrollably, mucus dripping from her nose. Seeing all of this, the protagonist starts teasing the girl, asking her to stop crying while laughing. He argues that the girl said she would follow his will, but now she's breaking her own promise by crying and not following the order. He keeps mocking the blonde without stopping, repeating the lines she herself said just seconds before. Seeing the whole commotion, the witch also joins the MC's team of followers. A message appears showing that both of them have joined the team and are ready to follow orders. Seeing that the leader seemed bothered, the hero asks if the two can officially join the group. Not having much choice, since they were originally the prince's guardians, the old man has to accept it. With his team complete, the boy gets excited, but his friends don't seem to share the same enthusiasm. The blonde remains suspicious, since only 3 days ago, His Highness had been captured by these very people. The followers of the God of Vengeance seem uncomfortable with the presence of the 2 girls. The full plan that these kidnappers had to capture the heir to the throne is explained. The plan involved smoke bombs and sleep-inducing substances in the horses' drinks. Trying to calm his friend, the MC says he understands her anger, but now everything is over, and in a way, it's a relief. He argues that even after all the events, no one ended up dead, and if that had happened, nothing would have played out as smoothly as it did over the past days. Reflecting on it, the fat boy realizes that if he weren't alive, he wouldn't have joined the Revolutionary Army and the original plot would have remained unchanged. Changing the subject, the warrior praises the boy for having lost quite a bit of weight in such a short time. She asks if her protege's cheeks have gotten thinner in the last few days. In reality, his weight only dropped because he had to climb mountains non-stop with his team. Jokingly, he says he didn't just lose weight, his soul went with all the suffering too. Suddenly, the boy asks what the girl will do if things get rough and hair starts growing where it shouldn't. He says the Empire was foolish to lose such a precious girl and makes some dirtier comments too. Having this kind of conversation is surreal for the MC since he always saw this character on his monitor. It feels like chatting with an old friend. That's because Carl's is a raid leader in the game. In the original game, some NPCs can increase their affinity and become party comrades, and the blonde is a clear example of that. Having such a strong teammate like her made most battles much easier, as she always had a solid attack plan. With both girls in his party along with the assassins, most of the players' problems were solved and became more manageable. He remembers the time when he used her as a party member, commanding her in every tough battle, until he got tired. Recalling the suffering he put the girl through while playing, he feels guilty, but the girl truly is a great warrior who lives up to her fame. However, in comparison, the blonde's red-haired friend is a harder puzzle to solve. She's quite difficult to use on the battlefield due to her more complex strategies. Something makes the boy freeze as he thinks it was good to have met the sorceress. To explain this, the girl notices the boy has frozen while looking at her and asks what's wrong with him. The blonde is experiencing a strange feeling. His chest hurts, which makes him wonder what's happening. The girl gets irritated when she realizes she's being stared at, but the MC notices that it feels as if his heart is somehow starting to develop feelings. Reflecting aloud, he wonders what's wrong with himself, because there's no way he could have feelings for that child, referring to the witch. And then he thinks that if she heard that, she would get irritated. But thankfully, the entire scene is only in his head. He reflects that being 19 years old is no longer considered a child for a little sorceress. The rumor is that she is over 200 years old and that all the witches share the same name, passing their memories from generation to generation, resulting in a tradition. Over all those years, it's noticeable that they all had the same appearance and name, inheriting the same fears and rumors surrounding their presence. Perhaps the reason for this is that this character isn't treated kindly in the original game. The warrior interrupts the MC's train of thought to give him a compliment, saying that he looks skinny and full of energy. She then says it feels like they're revisiting the past, surprising the team leader. She starts to explain that it feels like back when they were at the Juvenile Palace. That's the Children's Palace, a school where all elite aristocrats from the Empire sent their children. His charm and cleverness were so great that all the maids adored the young heir. The boy's fame was such that other aristocrats' children competed to meet the young lord. However, suddenly the player realizes that this story wasn't in the original game, and it seems that the facts are changing. The armored girl complains that it's a shame the Empire worships magic beyond reason, and a person is only considered valuable if they have great ability in controlling magic, which wasn't the case for the young prince, who was terrible at the art of channeling mana through his body. This made her very sad, as her friend had his fate sealed for not being a good mage. But he doesn't let that shake him and gives her a pat on the back to try to ease her sorrow. It's then revealed that this is Galosen's past, the most anticipated heir of the Emperor, that he had absolutely no talent for magic. And in this empire that only values those blessed with magic, lacking control over one's energy meant failure. Because of that, the young boy became increasingly twisted by nobility since they treated him with coldness and cruelty. And the story of his life is like the saying, the higher a bird flies, the more it suffers when it falls. At the moment, the boy's only goal is to reach the capital safely, so he asks his friend not to waste time thinking about the past. He justifies his request by saying to focus on the present, since it doesn't matter what kind of child he was in the past. After all, no one in the kingdom remembers who the third prince was during school, except for his friend. Surprisingly, the boy thinks it's actually good news that people don't know him deeply. The current reputation of the hare is that of a deserter who only thinks about drinking, eating, and partying non-stop. He doesn't want to have that reputation forever and asks his friend to remember one thing, that he will return with the qualifications needed to survive. He decides that the past doesn't matter anymore and that he doesn't need any talent for magic. Even with a terrible destiny card, instead of becoming an archmage, he'll have a chance if he puts in the effort. Very excited, he says that from now on, things will be different, so he asks everyone to lift their chests and get motivated. Hearing this gives confidence, making the girl believe in and trust his highness. On the road to the capital, the only ones excited are the two blondes, while the rest of the group looks tired. The prince explains to his friend why they must stop in Orax to understand his reasons and goals. He explains that there are traitors within the empire, and in fact, there are two people who might be involved. This surprises the warrior, as he never imagined there could be anyone else besides Viscount Morse. Morse is just the tip of the iceberg. As the more time passes, the more people betray the empire for their own interests. However, the boy says there's no need to worry since he knows all the names thanks to his experience in the game. He asks if she knows Market Elon Lloyd, the one guarding the northeastern part of the capital. It's explained that he's a close friend of the warrior's father and one of the top 3 magistrates of the empire. Something clicks in the girl's mind, making her realize that maybe this warrior is one of the empire's traitors. Going a bit crazy with this information, she starts saying all kinds of things, praising the Marquis, not believing that such an honorable man could have betrayed the empire. Fortunately, the knight jumped to conclusions, and Gillison never actually said the man was the traitor, only that he was told the Marquis is blocking passage to the capital. And the captain's orders are to try and capture the prince and bring him back to the palace, exactly the same orders the blonde girl has. Worried, the boy asks what they're going to do now and whether they might consider cooperating with the warrior. Knowing the magistrate, it doesn't take long to realize that won't work. The other strategy is for the prince to rebel, but that would be a disaster, as all the followers would be annihilated. That's not a strategy the priests are willing to follow, since they fear for their lives and prefer to seek a safer route. Annoyed that the girl frightened his followers, the boy asks them to stop the conversation. Then a possible plan crosses his mind, and he asks his follower if she brought 2 swords for the mission. Even though he isn't the most agile of fighters, he reaches out with his clumsy hand to request his friend's sword. But for warriors, a sword is like a lover. It's hard to hand it over to someone else. However, it doesn't take long to convince the boy to give the sword to the prince, who clearly has something in mind once he holds it. The sword is fairly ordinary, given to members of the Order of Knights, with no special effects beyond being well maintained. With the blade in hand, the boy gets excited to move on to the next phase of his plan and reach the capital. When his friend says the sword is good and will do, the boy is startled, thinking the intention is to defeat Marquis with that weapon. Then the blonde asks rhetorically whether warriors have methods taught by the Order. Of course, warriors have methods, and the same goes for gamblers, who also have their own ways of overpowering an enemy. Everyone continues walking without pause or rest, while the protagonist reflects that his story is only just beginning. The gate to the capital is still heavily guarded by imperial warriors, patiently awaiting their targets. Standing there is the great magistrate, who continues to wait patiently for his objectives. He is a 9-star warrior and a master of swords, and complains that it's frustrating how long it's taking. Impatient, he asks his soldier why it's taking so long, but the search effort has been thorough, and the team of assassins is skilled at causing confusion, which makes tracking them beyond imperial territory quite difficult. This irritates the knight even more, as he can't stand waiting in this place with nothing to do. He loudly complains that the prince will only be satisfied if he causes trouble for the kingdom every single day. Very sadly, he worries about his beloved daughter, who is currently accompanying the hare. Unfortunately, the beginning of the knight's life was not easy, as he is the bastard son of Lloyd, born from a union with a maid. And according to imperial law, the poor child was forced to live as a sort of servant. Using his power, he did everything he could to clear the boy's name and trusted that the count's family would raise him properly and responsibly. Frustrated, he grips his sword tightly, wondering why the prince treats her like a mere escort warrior. And it would be great if that fat third prince acted like a human being instead of treating everyone like his servants. He used to accompany the prince in almost all of his activities, in one of them even serving him food while the prince gambled rivers of gold. He also witnessed countless times when the drunkard brought women to bed, only caring about parties and nothing more. Angry at all the things his son had to endure at the hare's hands, he thinks that rather than rescuing him, it would be better to just let him move on to the afterlife. But that would end up being even worse, because his son would gain the reputation of failing to protect his own lord, destroying his career. As he reflects that this might be a better fate than rotting beside the swine, his warrior asks what he would do if the magistrate were taken hostage. Being highly skilled, he says he would defeat all of his enemies before even being struck once. and the idea that his daughter would finally be free if the prince were defeated brings some relief to his mind, making him smile faintly. His soldiers signal that the targets are here, and he reflects that the emperor ordered them to be captured alive, but he has no intention of following those orders. Charging ahead, he commands his men to follow and declares that he'll defeat them all. The prince's followers begin to panic, begging for the arrival of the warriors to be stopped, ready to block the path, which leaves the blonde very confused as his enemies don't seem to be preparing for battle, something very unusual. Hidden among the trees, the two girls order the warriors to step back and clear the way so no one gets hurt. Walking calmly, the prince asks if the warriors have gone mad since they can't even recognize his face. Seeing the cloaked men approaching, the knight is confused, wondering whether they are truly human or some kind of strange beings. Wearing a hood that makes it hard to identify who is who, the girl says to his highness that standing before him is the famous Captain Lloyd. But the man is very impatient and yells at the hooded ones with irritation. As peace settles, the girl steps forward to speak with the knight, surprising him as he wasn't expecting her presence. She then introduces herself, saying she is the eldest daughter of Count Silent, which saddens the knight, knowing it isn't true. The redhead also introduces herself, saying she comes from the Research Institute and claims it's been a long time since she last saw Lloyd. But the warrior has a sharp memory and recognizes her as the magic teacher of the third prince. Finally, she refers to the prince as beggar number 3, just as he slowly and calmly removes his hood. Looking closely at his face, the knight notices that somehow the prince has acquired a cold and serene gaze. This leaves him very confused, wondering if the third heir ever had that kind of look or appearance before. With a smile on his face, Marcus introduces himself and says it's very good to see the third prince again. He also says he's relieved to see his highness safe and sound, all thanks to the great imperial guardian dragon. But in truth, in his mind, he's cursing the boy, thinking he didn't receive any help from the imperial guardian at all. The man also notices that the prince's voice is quite different, sounding as if it changed drastically in a short amount of time. And it seems like he's turned into someone else. He wonders if this could be due to some dangerous influence. When the blonde proposes that his knights escort the prince back to the imperial palace, the boy replies that he already has a goal in mind. He speaks a bit sheepishly, fearing how the man will react, saying he doesn't want to return to the imperial castle. All the knights are left speechless, as they spent all these days waiting for the heir just to fulfill that one mission. So he asks the knight to order his soldiers who are guarding the gate to step aside as they are no longer needed. Speaking clearly and without fear of consequences, he says he's going to the capital. The magistrate thinks his highness has lost his mind and asks if he understands the words coming out of his own mouth. In his mind, he's furious, wondering why a prince of the empire would want to go to the enemy army's headquarters. Seeing the protagonist reach into his clothing, he wonders what he could possibly do that's so dangerous if he doesn't get out of the way. In truth, the boy's plan is now in motion, and he shouts that he will cut down the warrior if he doesn't move. This is both an order and a warning from the great prince. Hearing that line surprises the man because he knows the pig poses no real threat, yet he's still shocked by the audacity. And in truth, this is exactly the opportunity he was waiting for, a fight to free his daughter from the hare's grip. Having thought about this for a long time, he begins to draw his swords, finally about to get rid of the one he despised. But suddenly, a pain flares in his shoulder, drawing all his attention and distracting him from the battle for a few moments. At that moment, the boy asks what's wrong with the Marcus, but he responds that there's no problem and that he still wants to fight. What really happened is that his rage and fury almost dislocated his shoulder. He starts to think that all of this is just a joke and reflects that he doesn't have time to entertain the prince's stupidity. The joke begins to feel more and more real, making the knight wonder if the prince has gone insane out of nowhere. With a proud and threatening expression, he declares that he's a swordmaster and there are only 3 people with that title. But the boy already knew that, and was counting on the man's stubbornness to refuse to step aside. So everything continues according to plan. Then he mocks him, asking how his highness plans to hurt him, saying he's very curious to see what his fighting strategy is. There's a place for everyone in this game, and even if something seems impossible, there's always a hidden solution. However, the man is extremely confident in his own skills and says honestly that he could defeat the heir using nothing but a weak, tiny tree branch. Without any fear, he jokes that Lloyd could defeat him with just a toothpick, let alone a branch, making everyone around burst into laughter. But he quickly interrupts the scene, asking if that's really what's going to happen. Knowing how this game works, he states that he's aware the man hasn't used his right arm for quite some time. He mockingly asks if the man's shoulder is hurting, then questions whether he can truly defeat him under such unfavorable conditions. Proud of his skills, the man says he is still a Lan, and that won't change, bad arm or not. This knight is the embodiment of self-confidence in someone who has reached the peak of swordsmanship. Getting closer, he whispers in his rival's ear that he knows exactly what he wants to achieve by defeating the hare. That leaves the blonde speechless, trying to de-escalate the situation by saying his highness is just speaking nonsense. Then the prince asks how long the soldier plans to worry about a grown son, and whether he doesn't find that a bit shameful. When the boy says something that truly angers him, the soldier doesn't waste a second drawing his sword, preparing for what he thinks will be an easy fight. Calling the boy a brainless brat with a loose tongue, he finally unsheaths his blade, ready to defeat him. He says a father should know when to respect his son's choices and let him go live his own life. Irritated, he adds that if the prince's plan was to provoke him, then it worked perfectly, because now he's completely furious and focused on sending him to the afterlife. Sword in hand, the prince mocks, saying that now that the man's been insulted and drawn his blade, this is the proper time for a duel. He then shouts, calling out Gilosen, the third prince of the Belgic Empire, to an official duel. And according to the kingdom's laws, he must accept the challenge. With the strategy in mind, the prince accepts without hesitation, already knowing exactly what he must do next. Speaking to his soldiers, he orders that from now on, no one is to interfere with this official duel. Confident, he jokes that a 9-star swordsman believes he can defeat him, but things aren't always what they seem. In truth, everything is going according to plan, and the man is falling for it like a sitting duck, heading into a duel he won't win. A system notification appears showing an unexpected mission. A noble duel has been initiated. Accepting the mission, the blonde says he's ready to continue the battle. Even though his opponent is one of the best swordsmen, the MC doesn't consider himself just a forgotten prince. He knows he has good skills. In fact, he's a great prince with the soul of a professional gamer. The mission shows the objective: defeat your opponent, Alon Lloyd, and win the battle. A few days before reaching the portal to Orax, the boy was shouting that he would defeat Marcus Lloyd. The warrior wept bitterly, while the redhead kept a tired and stressed look with everything happening. People thought he was getting sick and losing his mind. They offered care, food, and even suggested he take a rest. Annoyed, the witch asked to be allowed to return home, convinced her master was going insane. While cooking, the followers of the god of vengeance reflected that this might be their last meal, since the upcoming battle was so dangerous. But the boy had a plan in mind and shouted for everyone to hear before they could act impulsively. He said he knew exactly what he was doing. Worried, the captain's daughter commented that none of the usual strategies would work, as the man was highly skilled and clever in the field. Unfortunately, the protagonist knew that the pig's only talents were eating, gambling, and betting. His condition was so pitiful he couldn't even defeat 9 beginner players in the world of GFW. He himself understood that saying he would defeat a level 9 warrior was sheer madness. And surely he would laugh a lot if he were on the other side of the situation, hearing such nonsense come from another NPC. Patiently, the redhead assumed the man was going mad, but chose to hear out the plan to decide whether to leave or follow him to the end. The boy got excited, as his teacher was the only one who still believed in his mental abilities. That gave him more confidence to speak up. After thanking her, the little witch began explaining everything she had in mind. Without going into detail, she said only that she would bet on a duel with the Empire's greatest warrior, and win. The two were shocked, unable to believe that such a plan could work. But the boy, oblivious to their reactions, said it was a simple plan to carry out. Annoyed, the sorceress slapped her disciple, saying that a duel with Lloyd was utterly absurd. He commented that any dog passing through the area would laugh at what he was saying. While getting smacked around, he added that the challenge team has the right to dictate the rules in a noble duel. That made both girls calm down a bit, since this clause did, in fact, exist in Imperial law. Being very clever, the boy stated that he would create rules that would favor him in combat, ensuring his victory. It was explained that GFW is not a game based solely on strength. With the right compatibility, it's possible to win any challenge, regardless of level. The protagonist had used this trick many times in the past, back when he was a professional player. He defeated countless enemies using only strategy and a bit of strength. In fact, traps and psychological effects are just as valid as direct attacks. He remembered the time he was defeated by a simple water slime. Back then, he punched his monitor out of rage. Losing to one of the most useless enemies in the game was humiliating. If he dictated the rules and the warrior agreed to witness the duel, he could win. So they asked what kind of rules he was going to propose. After all, if the rules were too absurd, the captain would never accept entering a duel with a clear disadvantage. The warrior himself emphasized that he wouldn't witness a duel with unfair rules, because his honor as a knight was on the line. Experienced and an excellent gambler, the boy replied that he would propose 3 rules. First, no magic would be allowed. The combat would be purely sword versus sword. Second, if either combatant's sword touched the ground, the other would win immediately. Third, and most importantly, both would fight without armor. The 2 girls were shocked upon hearing all the rules, but right after, they started doubting the boy's strategy, saying those rules wouldn't help him at all. Already very impatient and annoyed, the sorceress conjured a vine and ordered her student to turn around to be properly punished. But she didn't know that, in reality, this ended up helping him. The punishment restored the boy's class abilities and stamina. The warrior remarked that banning magic could limit the captain, but quickly corrected himself, knowing the man's skill went far beyond that. Tied up from head to toe, the boy was humiliated by the redhead, who sarcastically asked if he really thought he could knock the captain's sword to the ground. The last rule, fighting without armor, was rejected by the knight, saying he couldn't accept it because such a condition would threaten his highness's health. But the pig was confident, calming everyone around him by stating that the magistrate would not send him to the afterlife. If he did, his reputation would be ruined forever, and obviously he would make a rash decision out of mere anger. Even with all that said, the prince's friend remained concerned for his safety. Crying, he said that swords don't have eyes, and it's impossible to predict what might happen. But the boy replied that yes, that's true, yet he preferred to look at the situation from another point of view. He told everyone to try seeing the scene as if they were swordsmen who had already reached the pinnacle of mastery with the sword. Suddenly, a dog, or rather, a novice, approaches and asks to begin a duel. He asked how they would feel in the face of such a proposal. The knight laughed, saying it would be funny, even ridiculous, not realizing how immersed he already was in the protagonist's narrative. Curious, the boy asked what he would do in that situation. Would he defeat the novice or demonstrate his skills proudly? But the knight quickly answered, saying he would never do that out of respect for the honor he must uphold. After all, swordsmen are not assassins, and are taught never to humiliate an opponent. The redhead stepped closer, saying that even so an accident might happen, but the MC reassured her, saying that against a rank 9 opponent, it definitely wouldn't. Even with little skill, he would make sure not to be defeated by accident, because he didn't want anyone, especially Carl's, to worry. That's why he believed the Marcos wouldn't be able to harm him with his sword. In other words, a swordsman would not fight with full intention, because deep down he didn't want to disappoint someone he loved. The boy emphasized that without armor and without magic, the fight would become easier, and most importantly, he would fight carefully to ensure he didn't get hurt. After hearing all that reasoning, the companions finally calmed down. They said that now everything made sense and the battle would be interesting. Laughing and visibly relaxed, the boy commented that no matter how much Lloyd wanted to defeat him, he wouldn't need armor to defend himself. In fact, the plan was to leave the opponent in pieces, which surprised his friend, who stared at him in silence. He soon asked why he wanted to do something so cruel to the warrior of the Empire. The boy reflected and said that the man was an annoying obstacle in the path to his future. But by saying it out loud, he affirms that there's some kind of intrigue between the two, and that he can't reveal what he truly wants, at least not yet. His friend becomes curious, not fully understanding what he meant. The witch also appears, saying she's curious and asking if something happened between the two that no one knows about. But the boy dodges the question with a smile and simply says it's time to eat. Everyone is gathered around the campfire as the MC asks them to listen to what he has to say carefully. Knowing all the characters in this game, he says the knight seems strong and perfect, but actually has a major weakness. But the comment is met with laughter, as if the captain had any weakness, everyone would know about it. And it's unfortunate that the combination of magic and swordsmanship isn't that great. While looking at the servant, they say they've heard that combining magic with sword skills is something not yet well developed. They say this in comparison to other masters who have that ability far more refined in their minds, unlike the man. Interrupting, the protagonist says he's not referring to the markers of greatness, which leaves everyone confused, wondering what exactly the boy is talking about. The condition of the knight's right shoulder is in bad shape, and the paralysis is severe, making it easier to win a duel. This leaves the blonde shocked, as he doesn't believe the captain's shoulder is truly damaged and paralyzed. This was such a well-kept secret that no one in the kingdom knew about it, making everyone ask how the protagonist found out something like that. Before saying anything, the MC reflects that when he used to play, he was nerfed because he was so powerful that no one could beat him. So he wonders if he should mention it to balance the match. However, since he can't say something like that, he has to lie and ends up saying he overheard the Emperor talking to the head of the Imperial Knights. Fortunately, the redhead and her friends believe him without much effort, giving the boy a chance to convince them to accept the duel. The boy feels happy because, if the rumor is true, the captain won't be able to use his main skill, the Vanguard sword technique. This skill requires the use of both hands, and it was with it that Elan advanced to the 9-star ranking. His perfect compatibility with the sword made many players afraid to face him in the game. Most beginners complained that the game's balance was broken, since it was impossible to beat him with such a sharp weapon and technique. At some point, the player complaints peaked, forcing the developers to seal the techniques and the use of a howling blade. A game unification was announced, stating that Lloyd's balance had been completed and apologizing for the inconvenience. After the update, the warrior appeared with a shoulder defect, refusing to show his skill or his sword. This was a terrible balancing implementation in the game, but ended up being a great advantage for the protagonist. Even though this is a golden opportunity for His Highness, the swordsman is still a master in combat, because even using just one hand, his skill matches that of a rank 7 swordsman, and the boy doesn't even come close to rank 1. So they joke that, to put it simply, the prince can't even compare to the warrior's pinky finger. Everyone seems to lose hope and dreams in this world, because even with the captain weakened, no one believes they truly stand a chance. Looking at the character's stats, the MC thinks that, thanks to the nerf, once he reaches a certain level, he'll have a real chance to beat him. The only problem is that he doesn't have any level at all, and even the easiest mobs in the starting stages are level 10. One of the weakest enemies is a level 10 goblin bandit, seen in almost every region of the game. When Carl asks what they'll do next, the blonde asks if there are any goblins or kobolds in this forest to hunt. With an idea in mind, they head to the Black Forest region, a dense and dangerous place full of skilled goblins and kobolds. A game notification shows that the emerging monsters in this area are bandits and thieves. The three head toward the hunting location, but the place is definitely not recommended for beginners. Watching from afar, the followers comment to the priest that the prince has started doing strange things again. The old man simply orders his companions to keep watching and not let the three fools get captured by the knights. Everyone is running at full speed, but the warrior complains that his armor is stuck, though he can't stop even for a second. In front of everyone stands the sorceress, casting fire spells, ready to defeat the first mobs and farm XP. Approaching is the excited boy, asking his master to almost defeat the first enemies. And that's exactly what the young woman does, casting fire magic on the two of them, bringing their health down to almost zero. With both nearly defeated, the blonde steps forward and a notification appears stating that the goblin thief has been captured. The prince's role is simply to finish off the enemies and earn the XP from the victory, and that's exactly what he's doing now. With a single strike, he defeats both with little difficulty, as their health was already nearly gone. But this system only works inside the game because in real life, finishing off enemies grants no combat experience. His team doesn't understand what kind of training this is, since they do all the hard work just for someone else to deal a final blow. The boy's order is to defeat no one, and instead he asks that all enemies be brought to one place, so he can take them down with a single precise strike. Being quite the executioner when it comes to training, the redhead shouts, telling him to train properly, since one only learns and practices a skill by using it constantly. However, this strategy is common knowledge for any player who's ever entered GFW, and it's exactly what the MC will do for the next few hours. According to the game's system, the stronger the enemy you fight, the more experience and XP you gain by defeating it. Even if a low-level player defeats a high-level monster when it's nearly dead, almost on its way to heaven, they still earn a large amount of XP. Being the one sending all the enemies to the afterlife, he's receiving all the experience points. After a good amount of farming, a system notification appears stating that the boy has finally leveled up. The feeling of leveling up is strange. A warmth spreads throughout the boy's body, signaling that it's time to improve his skills. However, in the middle of the hunt, something catches the attention of the future swordsman, leaving him frozen. One of the goblins crawls nearly lifeless, complaining that his opponent is a coward for using such a dirty strategy. Unfortunately, inside the game they are considered just mobs that revive endlessly, but they look like living creatures, making the MC hesitant to finish them off. Seeing that the boy is hesitant to eliminate mere enemies, the team complains, saying he should think about the dignity of the Imperio family. But the boy believes he's already leveled up enough and says they should look at the stats, which are what matter most right now. Another skill point is awarded, prompting the boy to open the notification system to allocate it. The system opens the skill tree to unlock a new skill and make the prince even stronger. The boy becomes even more excited, happy to finally be reaching a decent level and able to defeat his enemies. With the skill tree open, several abilities appear in the sky for the protagonist to choose from and increase his combat power. Then he tells his teammates he's going to learn a new skill, leaving everyone curious to know which one it will be. The skill chosen will be one that can best exploit the knight's weakness and guarantee victory. Exploiting the captain's shoulder pain will be a good strategy, but the man still has many techniques capable of defeating any opponent. Starting to write on the ground with a stick, he lists several techniques the man might use, asking how to deal with them all. He claims the boy has no idea what kind of sword technique will be used, but still asks if that's really the biggest concern, saying he has memorized all of those techniques and that's why he's not afraid of facing his opponent. He states and writes in the dirt that the technique the Marcos will use is called Sword Trafalgar. Even though the man knows many techniques, he will certainly use that one in a duel for reasons that will be explained next. This technique was passed down through generations until it reached the Night Lord, and it focuses on defense and coordination. This piques the blonde's curiosity, who wonders how the prince knows such classified formations, as it should be impossible to predict which skill would be used. This technique is excellent for those who value defense and coordination, and it was created in the Kingdom of Luxon, one of the Empire's vassal states. However, this kingdom sought complete domination and used Sword Trafalgar to aggressively and severely hunt down the nomadic people. This strategy was extremely cruel to that people, and many were defeated without even having the chance to defend themselves. And in truth, all abilities have their counter-reactions and techniques that can be used for defense. The persecuted nomads swore revenge on the Kingdom of Luxon, even though they were at a disadvantage both in technique and military strength. To avoid army surveillance, these people hid their anger and practiced their own sword skills relentlessly and with vengeance. With that single technique, they struck back at the oppressive kingdom in a coordinated assault. This one technique nearly defeated the entire Kingdom of Luxon, as it was designed for the sole purpose of revenge. Unfortunately, the nomads were defeated in the end, but they left behind their culture and sword knowledge for anyone willing to learn. The technique is called Nomadic Quick Sword, containing all the resentment of a people who wander the lands of the continent. And it ends up being perfect for the occasion, as it is the best defensive skill against the Marcos' technique, ensuring victory. After learning the Nomadic Quick Sword technique, there will be a small hope of winning. However, the knight will only allow his friend to fight if he is sure the boy won't get hurt. Turning to the redhead, he asks if she understood the entire strategy and now has confidence in their team's victory. After a few seconds of silence, she finally shouts excitedly, asking when her disciple studied history like that. Approaching him, she says she could have taught the boy anything he wanted about history, and he justifies his knowledge with a lie. After hearing from the prince himself that he read the book, the team is speechless, since the pig had never shown interest in reading or intellectual things before. Confident in victory, the witch gives the boy permission to learn any skill he wants, praising him for making quick decisions. Opening the skill tree, he starts wondering which one he should choose first, And as expected, high-level abilities can't be seen and only appear as mission markers to be unlocked later. Fortunately, the hare is a pro at this game and knows everything about the skill tree. He knows exactly what to do for the perfect build. After a while, he searches for the location of the nomadic quick sword technique and finally finds it. Unfortunately, to unlock it, he'll have to open sub-skills and first learn Traveler's martial arts. However, to unlock Traveler's martial arts, there's a minimum requirement of 3 points, shocking the MC with a high cost. In fact, according to his stats, the boy only has 3 skill points to distribute across the entire tree, meaning he'll have to pay a very high cost just to unlock one. This is considered a rip-off as he'll need to spend all of his points just to unlock a basic punching skill. Even though it's expensive, there's no other choice. He needs this ability to access higher level ones. Spending his 3 precious points, he finally learns the martial arts skill. After learning it, the wild fighting method is added to the prince's body, giving a 1% bonus to both strength and endurance. As soon as his partner levels up, the knight notices a physical difference and is briefly surprised. He approaches, saying the boy's vitality has improved, and it's clearly visible that his body is in much better shape since the start of the journey. This excites him because it all came from simply learning one skill. Finally, the second ability for the build is unlocked, making the Lord excited about becoming even stronger. However, once again, the cost to unlock it is very high, -4 points. The boy is left completely speechless at how much he's being ripped off, not believing it should cost so much. Apparently, the point requirement increases with each level, meaning the MC must level up 4 more times. He wonders how long it'll take to gain 4 levels just by gaining XP from hitting simple goblins. Thinking ahead, he recalls that the Nomad's technique is the 3rd skill to be unlocked, and begins calculating how many points he needs. He quickly realizes he'll have to reach level 9 to unlock the build needed to defeat the Marcus, and that's going to take a long time farming XP. And at this exact moment, the boy is still at level 1, making a strange expression that leads his friend to suggest he rest. Apologizing, he tells his team that a long and difficult road awaits them, leaving everyone confused about what they're going to do. Then he says it will be as hard as driving a bus, leaving the warrior confused about what a bus is, since he only knows of an escort. Excited, yet still wearing a tired expression, he tells them to keep going, because there are many levels left to climb. Some time passes, and the followers of the God of Vengeance remain in the same place, but they begin to fear being discovered. After several hours of XP farming, he finally manages to unlock the second skill, learning extreme training. Only the last ability remains, but everyone is completely exhausted and reaching their limits. After so much farming, everyone starts going a little crazy and asks to hit the prince's backside a little to get some immediate relief. Even with his stamina nearly full, the two argue over who gets to use the vine first. While getting hit, he never imagined he'd go through something like this, but thanks to his team who are aiming at his rear, he might live a long life. Watching from afar with binoculars, the followers complain that this scene is more than they should be seeing and wonder if they should run or not. After several days of training, night falls in the forest and people begin gathering once more. After fighting non-stop, the boy is much thinner and in shape. It would be strange if he weren't after all that effort. Speaking to the sorceress, he asks if there's a way to fix his clothes as he became so thin that they're slipping off and falling from his body. So he's handed a type of belt to tie his garments while they wait for a more practical solution. Everyone is tired, thirsty, and hungry, but the prince, focused on his goal, ignored their requests. Finally, he manages to unlock the technique he wanted so badly, and now he can head toward his long-awaited objective. The warrior says that, although it's a counter-reaction ability, it's still a weak Class C skill. But the protagonist reassures him, saying it will do for now, and that this technique actually has a hidden secret. The clues to unlocking the secret are that this technique holds the resentment of an entire people, and second, it requires defeating an enemy's technique once. Several days of intense training go by, with everyone giving their all to improve their skills. With that, the day finally arrives to challenge the great Elan Lloyd to a duel. The 3 rules for the battle are: no armor is allowed, no magic can be used, and if your sword drops to the ground, you lose. However, the knight believes the rule of fighting without armor is ridiculous and refuses to accept it. The ex-fat boy stands in a battle stance, sword in hand, waiting for his opponent to accept the rules so he can finally get what he wants. The soldiers comment on the third prince, asking if he has a hole in his head because attacking the magistrate seems idiotic. Others speak more angrily, saying the boy is a disgrace to the empire. At the start of the battle, the blonde can sense his enemy's thoughts, and it feels as if they want his arm to be sliced off. As the fight begins, as expected, the warrior activates his great technique, which begins to energize his sword in the first few seconds. Not wanting to fall behind, the MC also activates his nomadic quick sword skill to counter-react. Seeing that his blade is glowing too, he feels ready and tells himself he's prepared to win. However, one problem remains. The hidden secret of his technique is still locked, and discovering it would give him an edge. Before the fight officially begins, his teammate complains that the boy needed more training time, as he learned the skill just recently. It seems the boy forgot that his opponent is the captain of the army, and it would have been safer to leave this duel to the blue-eyed blonde. Unfortunately, fully aware of how the game system works, he knows that no matter how much more he trains, he won't grow stronger. There's no way out. This leaves the warrior confused, but there are many reasons, and one of them is the conditions for evolving certain skills. Ilan's technique is Class B and the protagonist's is Class C, making it clearly weaker. As his opponent advances, it's explained that the way to evolve the nomadic ability is to perfectly defeat the Trafalgar technique. A notification shows that by being on the same level as the opponent, the evolution condition has been updated and now requires defeating the enemy's technique at least once. Unfortunately, neither of his two teammates can use this ability, meaning the only way to level it up is by defeating the powerful opponent. In this duel, his primary goal is to achieve the evolution of his skill against the Marquis. He already expected a ridiculous condition like this, but it's still an insanely difficult challenge, even for a professional. The knight keeps advancing fearlessly, while the MC thinks this is just a rhythm game and nothing more. Remembering his endless matches using the simple method of clicking the mouse according to the timing shown on the computer screen. But things get much harder in real life because he also has to move his body. The redhead becomes concerned about her student's health, but interference in the battle is not allowed. If the witch intervenes in the duel, her partner will immediately lose and she'll be severely punished under imperial law. The battle progresses at an insane pace, with the warrior advancing and the hero maintaining a defensive stance. The fight is so dangerous that the blonde can afford even a millisecond of mistiming in his defense. There's almost no margin. System notifications display the progress of the fight, indicating whether he was hit or when he perfectly blocked an attack. Activating in 5 seconds, the Trafalgar attack's ultimate is triggered, enough to defeat the MC with a single blow. Sweet and cold, he realizes his opponent is going to use the final version of his skill in this fight, seeing that he's more unhinged than he appears. Once again, his system notification reminds him of his objective, to perfectly counter the Trafalgar sword technique. For a few seconds, he's trapped in his thoughts, reflecting that if he loses now, his priests will be exterminated. And without a doubt, he'll be forced to return to the royal palace, only to be sent to heaven by those who want him 6 feet under. Completely focused on his goals, he tells himself he won't accept that fate or such a tragic ending. Channeling the spirit of a complete warrior, he points his blade forward, waiting for the attack. Seeing this reaction surprises the knight, who didn't expect such courage, making him pause for a few seconds. Being a professional in this game, having spent half his life in it, he's faced this opponent many times, even if only in a virtual world. With the sword energized, the man proudly says that, judging by his opponent's spirit, he won't have to hold back in this battle. So he won't restrain himself in defeating the protagonist. However, the MC already has all his habits and attack methods memorized. He doesn't feel even a bit of fear of this ultimate attack, since he knows exactly how to react in order to survive it. The two charge at each other, but the MC knows he won't be defeated in such a simple way. Wearing a confident smile, he blocks the attack while advancing with a counterblow to secure victory. Seeing that his strike didn't hit his enemy, the captain is completely shocked, wondering how his attack was stopped. Dodging the blow leaves red sparks scattered throughout the environment. Meanwhile, the soldiers watch in surprise, since they didn't think a prince would last this long. Realizing that the blue glow and frozen time are just like last time, it indicates that the clock has stopped ticking. Multiple system notifications appear, showing what's happening, and the main one reveals that the nomadic technique has evolved into the manatee sword method. Another notification tells the MC to choose one of 3 effects now displayed on the screen. The boy, frozen in time, is shocked that he finally managed to evolve his skill. Now his only task is to choose which effect to acquire. Before choosing, he celebrates, completely stunned that he survived the madmen with swords, wondering if this is a bug or not. However, he almost drops his mouse, which would make his in-game sword fall, a tragedy that would signify defeat. Still, the duel isn't over yet, and the boy must stay focused in order to actually defeat his opponent. Once again, the manatee method prompts him to choose one of 3 special effects before continuing the game. It's explained that the Chinese words come from the nomadic people having borrowed some martial techniques from the eastern continent. The first effect, Total Annihilation, is known as an area attack, likely with massive damage. But the protagonist chooses flower graphing, believing it must have some dazzling and necessary effect to win this battle. As he clicks in the system, he shouts that his choice is the flower ability. A system notification appears, confirming that the ability has been learned. The game remains paused while the skill is being embedded in the MC's body, ensuring that when the game resumes, he'll be able to truly win the duel. The system notification says that the game's functionality will return to normal, prompting the MC to prepare and refocus. It's explained that this chosen skill transfers flowers from one tree to another, and somehow, this will be useful. It has the ability to deflect enemy attacks and amplify the user's own counterstrike. In truth, this skill is known for being a counterattack technique and is made precisely for moments like this, guaranteeing an unlikely victory. As the abilities activate, the blonde is left completely speechless, not expecting his opponent to be so skilled. In addition to all this, every other ability was added to his counterattack techniques, and even a skilled master swordsman can't withstand such a powerful strike. The only remaining concern is the player's own skill. But in this case, there's no need to worry because we're talking about a professional gamer. Knocking the Great Knight's sword to the ground, he reflects that, as someone who played this game his whole life, this is nothing more than a simple challenge. With a single precise strike, the magistrate's sword flew far away, leaving everyone impressed. The soldiers are left speechless, as they knew the skill of their commander, and even so, he wasn't able to win the battle. Everyone starts wondering how this happened and how the general dropped his sword. Even the protagonist's own team was surprised as they hadn't truly believed their friend would win, left speechless when they saw a victory. The captain looks at his hand, still realizing he's without a sword, and wonders if this has become a hand-to-hand duel. He's deeply confused since his blade was knocked away after a simple clash. He wonders what move the prince used to accomplish that. Even after winning, the blonde remains frozen in place because it was an achievement far beyond extraordinary. Starting to retrace the battle steps, the knight reflects on what technique his opponent used to understand how he was defeated so easily. He realizes the technique used was the one created for counterattacking, the Trafalgar technique, and wonders how the pig learned something so specific. Because before the player took over his body, the prince was nothing but a useless drunk, and now suddenly he's winning a duel. With excitement, he simply says he won the battle, keeping a smile on his face as now he can finally continue on his path to the army headquarters. The magistrate realizes this wasn't a coincidence, it was carefully calculated, while his opponent says he wants to give a few orders. Shouting, he commands all the knights to step aside and clear the portal's entrance, though the tension from the duel still lingers in the air. Growing suspicious, the Imperial asks his opponent if he's really sure he's the third prince he used to know. His theory is that the great Imperial dragon has been reborn after hundreds of years, right now. Getting a chill down his spine, his second theory is that the hare's body was taken over by a necromancer from the Eastern Sea. The boy reassures his opponent, saying the duel is already over, and asks if he wants him to prove his innocence in a more violent way. With sarcasm, the man replies that if the boy wants them to get violent, there's nothing that can stop him. This surprises the MC as he didn't expect his opponent to actually be open to seeing him act aggressively. But it turns out to be just a joke. Walking slowly to retrieve his sword, he acts calmly, accepting his defeat according to Imperial law. Then he announces to everyone that the head of the Lloyd family acknowledges his own defeat in favor of the protagonist's victory. Suddenly, he kneels before the boy, leaving him completely speechless. He didn't expect something like that to happen. He says that being able to compete with and receive instruction from the third prince, the pillar of the empire, brings him an honor he will never be able to contain in his heart. At peace with himself even in defeat, he thanks his opponent for the duel and the lessons learned. This leaves the player deeply surprised as he never expected one of the empire's greatest swordsmen to consider it an honor to be defeated by the pig prince. A system notification shows that the unexpected event has ended with Elan being defeated in the noble duel. Unfortunately, the knights do not accept that they lost and demand a rematch, upset because they believe their general was humiliated. After much commotion and everyone saying something was off in that duel, the captain stands up, irritated, asking everyone to stop, declaring that this was a legitimate battle. He asks if his comrades didn't see that he dropped his sword, while the prince still held his, which clearly signified victory. Even so, they continue to doubt it, thinking and forming a theory that maybe the captain let the hare win. Therefore, they say the duel must be declared void and redone. Reflecting on it, the MC knows that even in defeat, Lloyd is a powerful man who could break any sword with his bare hands. Stunned, the MC tells his opponent that he was worried he wouldn't accept the outcome, but this reaction is a bit unexpected. While calming his soldiers, the man says he doesn't need to give any more explanations for why he accepted his rival's victory. Joking that a loser of a duel should stay silent, he admits he ended up talking too much just to ease his soldiers' concerns. The MC reflects that this is what a great man looks like, and that's exactly what his friend will become in the future. He also notices that the little witch is in love, thinking to himself that she can't have a crush on both the father and the son at the same time. Honorable as always, the knight says he'll open the way for the prince to pass and promises to ensure the revolutionary army gets through the portal. Everyone gets excited when the blonde asks the priest of vengeance to prepare for teleportation to the capital, celebrating at last their victory after so many days of training and hardship. The witch asks her friend if the Marcos will be alright since he just betrayed an order from the Empire. Unfortunately, there will be no consequences for the knight as he was defeated in a noble duel and now must follow Imperial law. And every decision must follow the will of the victor, even if the winner is recklessly insisting on heading to the enemy capital. As they talk, the blonde interrupts everything by shouting, saying he doesn't want them gossiping right now. Before they leave and move toward their goal, the man gets the prince's attention, asking if he can have a few words. Saying it's for the honor of the royal family, he explains that he'll set up a place for everyone to wash up before they go, asking if that's alright. What the man is actually saying in a much more polite way is that all the adventurers are filthy, and that's bad for the imperial family's image. Inside the bath, while cleaning up, someone says they'll also serve a meal so the group can make the journey without going hungry. 2 buckets of water are placed on the ground to wash the travelers so they can finally smell decent. After cleaning themselves, they comment that the water and cloth turned black from wiping their bodies, joking they were dirtier than rags. Heading toward the forest, the witch disappears, saying she'll clean herself with magic, but it somehow feels like a lie. They remark that if she really could clean herself with magic, she would have done it earlier. Throwing an entire bucket of water on his chest, the boy turns to his friend and says he has something important to ask. Surprising the MC, he asks what words were exchanged with the captain before the duel began. The prince is startled as his friend overheard the blackmail involving the magistrate's son. Innocently and curiously, he asks what it means to worry about your grown son, since he still doesn't know the knight is his father. The boy starts to panic, realizing he must stay calm and avoid saying too much. It's strange since the boy suddenly seems clever, totally out of character, and admits he was stunned when he heard the word son. Dunking nearly his whole head in the water, the protagonist realizes he may have said too much, possibly revealing a huge secret too early. Still holding the bucket, the blonde begins to think out loud, saying maybe it's a secret about his birth. This leaves the hare completely frozen, realizing he's been found out, and now he'll have to invent a much better lie or tell the truth. Starting to get nervous, Carl asks if the father mentioned earlier is the captain and wonders if there's some secret surrounding his birth. Seeing that the secret is on the verge of being exposed, the boy starts to get out of the bath, trying to think of a way to deny everything. To buy himself a few more seconds to think, the MC grabs a bucket of water and throws it at his friend, lying that his hand slipped. He explains that he splashed water on his friend because he was talking too much nonsense, and that none of what he thought is actually true. He asks him not to overthink this useless subject. However, this only makes things worse as the warrior becomes even more confused about why the topic would be useless. Wondering what to do now, the protagonist knows this moment must be revealed someday in the future, during a reunion mission between father and son. He starts to worry because he doesn't want to ruin the best mission in the whole game in such a silly way, which is the Midnight Night quest. Even worse, he's still naked in a bathtub, and as a serious human being, he won't tolerate that. He asks his friend for a few seconds, explaining that it's not quite what it seems. He lies to him, saying he's thinking and saying crazy things and that none of it is exactly like that. And his friend says he's relieved to hear it. This surprises the blonde because his friend is relieved that the Marquis isn't his father, which is actually terrible news. However, remembering the previous duel, it makes a bit of sense, since the magistrate seemed to be a very harsh man with both his children and his companions. He smiles, reflecting that it's understandable his friend wouldn't want to be the royal knight's son. Sweetly and with relief, the boy says he thought he had a different father and actually believed it was General Lloyd. Once again, this worries the MC as all the pieces are falling into place too soon, which could ruin important quests in the game. Flexing his muscles, the boy says it's a wild idea for a simple escort warrior, but it does make some sense since he knows the general very well. Trying to hide his discomfort, the blonde asks what else he can even say in this situation, outwardly calm but inwardly anxious. Throwing another bucket of water on his friend, he tells him to get those weird ideas out of his head before he loses his mind. While bathing, he thinks about how ironic and comical this whole situation is from beginning to end. Because in truth, his friend really is the Marquis's son, and all the effort he's making now to deny it is just to avoid disrupting the world's natural timeline. But he knows that soon enough his friend will learn the truth, and it will clear up all the questions he has about his own birth. When the night calls his attention again, the boy starts to freeze up, wondering what it is this time and how he's going to escape this new situation. Fortunately, the question is simpler. How does the prince know the captain so well without being a close relative? Once again, the warrior gets annoyed, because earlier his companion was talking total nonsense, and now he seems smarter than before, making strong arguments. But he knows that the more he reveals about this game, the stranger the world becomes. Up until now, he's managed to dodge things with excuses, but that won't work much longer. That's because he took over the body of the insane pig prince, who threw away all knowledge and only cared about parties, food, and gambling. And he feels that, over time, his excuses will begin to fall apart and become irritating to everyone around him. Worried, he says he needs to think of something quickly, because if Carls and his master discover the truth, he's truly doomed to ascend to heaven. While he reflects out loud for a while, the knight asks if his highness has a problem, since he's been acting very strangely in these recent moments. After thinking for quite a while, he realizes that all he needs is the perfect setup, and that way, he'll escape all his problems. Night falls, and the adventurers begin heading toward the portal, once more to finally reach the capital. The hooded figures gather in front of the portal, almost like a legion of fanatics. The witch complains that it's taking too long, but the problem is they need to move several people through a single portal, so the time required is significant. It will take half a day to inject enough mana and confirm the correct coordinates. Otherwise, they risk ending up in the wrong place and ruining the entire plan. Impatient, the sorceress steps forward and pours in all her mana, saving everyone from the waiting time and showing her exceptional magical ability. The followers are amazed as the energy increases at an incredible rate, speeding up the entire process. Thanks to the girl's magnificent power, the task can now be completed in just 1 hour. After taking their much-needed baths, the two adventurers finally return, and the prince asks if everything is going smoothly with the transport portal. We also see that the boy is wearing new clothes, much nicer ones gifted to him by the knights for free, allowing him to have his own style now. The knight explains that the prince's old clothes had become so loose they could no longer be worn thanks to the significant weight loss he experienced over the last few days. Showing off the fabric, he says it feels much better balanced now, probably because it's night-grade clothing. Even the priest of vengeance praises his friend, saying he looks much better now with a cleaner appearance. With a smile on his face, the blonde agrees, happy not to look like a delinquent anymore. From afar, the silent hooded man appears, saying he still can't believe something, being mysterious even in his words. He then asks his companion if he really defeated the captain, and the prince replies that if he had lost, all of his comrades would already be long gone. He points to the knights, asking if his colleague can't see them from afar standing peacefully, affirming that even if it's a hard story to believe, the greatest proof of his victory is the fact that they are all still there. Mocking, he asks the man to take off his hood and take a closer look if he doesn't believe it. After all, he is not a son of darkness. Feeling disrespected, the possible main character slaps the protagonist in the face, angered by the mockery. Unfortunately, today was not the day the protagonist saw the masked man's face, and he complains that he didn't need to get slapped over a joke. The magistrate approaches His Highness as he had apparently been searching for him everywhere. Followed by the entire fleet of knights, he says it's a joy to see him so enthusiastic in pursuing his goal. This greatly unsettles the player, as there is something wrong with the man that deeply disturbs him. They are startled when the captain says he has decided to ensure everyone's safety regarding the priests. However, in a peaceful manner, the man says that both sides have threatened each other for a long time, and obviously, there were misunderstandings in the process of forming an alliance. With a focused look, he asks His Highness why not introduce everyone so they can get to know each other better, which is quite suspicious, as normally both sides are rivals in every aspect, and suddenly an Imperial wants to be introduced to the revolutionary side. The magistrate explains that it is necessary to have the servant's perspective, since it feels like sending the Empire's future into the unknown. Speaking in a strange tone, he says he should get to know who is leading the opposing side. Addressing the priest on his team, he asks him to introduce himself along with the rest of his companions. The two main members of the assassins think this is a ridiculous idea, as introducing themselves to the head of the knights is dangerous. Realizing this won't work, the MC asks the Marquis to let the introductions happen later, and that they should proceed to the teleport portal. Seeing that the prince won't clear up any misunderstandings between the two sides, a knight begins to devise a plan. Getting close to the priest of vengeance, he speaks directly to him, saying he has a request for the man to fulfill. He states sincerely that he wishes to send his regards to someone special. Suddenly, he strikes the leader of the assassins in the neck, completing the sentence. The regards are for Archbishop Randall of the temple. The blonde stands completely speechless, thinking, who is this archbishop, as he watches his friend being defeated. The boy is left speechless at the sight, as he didn't know this was going to happen. Archbishop Handel is the highest priest in the entire Church of Aelum, the supreme leader above all the lesser priests, having achieved brilliant feats, coming very close to earning the 9-star rank, the same as Lloyd. Being an excellent warrior despite it not being her specialty, surviving many great battles. It is known that she was on the front lines in a direct battle against the Empire, managed to face the Marquis, lost an arm in the process, and was forced to flee. While the captain says he will take her other arm, the MC reflects that this would be like a slap in the face for someone who has already lost one. It would be a terrible idea since she already lacks a limb, and bringing this up would be risky. Approaching the masked man, visibly irritated, says that even so, the archbishop will be left wondering about the health of her rival. He asserts that he will personally give the proper answers to the lady, as it seems the great Marquis hasn't gotten rusty in the meantime. In a friendly tone, the blonde says the gate to Orax will open soon, and that His Highness should be preparing to go with the revolutionary army. Before that happens, he asks his priest to go ahead and prepare with the others, as he needs to talk to his friend before making decisions. The two stand face to face, staring at each other for a few seconds before starting to speak, as there's much to discuss. Breaking the initial silence, the captain says His Highness won a duel against one of the Empire's finest swordsmen, and therefore must follow the orders of the victor, and he won't stop the boy from heading toward his goal in the capital, Orax. However, as a knight of the Empire, there are things he needs to ask, questioning what the young man thinks about entering enemy territory in this way. Before answering the older man's statement, the blonde reflects aloud if that's the first question. He stays silent for a few seconds, thinking before responding, and then Lloyd says he went on a secret mission a long time ago, when he was younger. He states that there's no place as dangerous as Orax, as it's a land of blizzards, and the fortress, there is like an iron wall. On top of that, to make things worse, inside the fortress, many clever thieves infest the city's streets. At the city's market, there are many dangerous items being sold casually as if they were nothing. The region is incredibly chaotic, to the point where human lives are discarded as if starting over that way was normal. This specific knowledge about the capital makes the knight wonder how the prince knows so many details. Calmly, he begins to say that inside the place there are 6 factions, including 2 churches. Above all of that, in the city, here's the leader of the revolutionary army, who unites all these people under one greater cause. Before the boy can mention the name, the warrior reacts sharply, saying that even thinking of that name inside Imperial territory is a crime. Growing impatient, the protagonist says he knows enough about Orax and yet is not surprised. Which is surprising because in the mountains surrounding the region, there's a dragon's nest, also known as a major dungeon. It's a terrible place filled with crazed dragons who kidnap rival children and abandon them in the nest. Moreover, this is the only place that gives humans a chance to command powerful dragons. And that's exactly what the blonde intends to do: challenge this mission and gain the ability to command a dragon. Worried, the warrior says many people try this challenge every year, but the last person to succeed was 17 years ago. His name was Feral Karaz, and ever since he disappeared, there have been no more dragon riders on this continent to this day. Still confident in his abilities, the MC says that if Karaz could do it, he will too, with no fear of failure. Even if the warrior doesn't consider the last dragon rider a normal person, he was still human, and that proves anyone can do it. Even so, it will be an extremely difficult task, and it's not something that can be conquered with determination alone. It will require a great deal of effort, but if he has all the necessary equipment, a high level, and the right skills, he'll succeed. Being a clever and experienced player in the game, this is a dungeon that's worth the effort to complete. The plan is to prepare as much as possible in the capital before entering that dungeon, only then will victory be assured. He promptly says he's not asking for the Marquis's permission, stating that this is the path he's chosen for himself. This attitude surprises the magistrate for a few seconds, as he didn't expect the pig to be showing confidence in his own abilities. Stopping to think for a few seconds, he concludes that the person in front of him is no longer the third prince he once knew. He can't see any trace of the fool who was rotting away inside the imperial palace with parties and drinks. He also wonders how the boy knew about his son's secret, which was locked away under 7 seals. Moreover, the technique used to counter the knight's ability wasn't known to just anyone. Lastly, he questions how the prince got information about Orax, while at the same time the blonde reflects that he has fought this knight several times. Looking into the eyes of his former rival, he can feel the blade of his sharp sword at his throat. He can vividly sense the feeling of sword against sword during the duel they had just minutes earlier. Finally, the magistrate wants to ask a second question to his new companion. He states that this is the most important question, so the boy must answer it with honesty. Fortunately, the boy had already prepared his answers while washing up, since it's suspicious how he knows the secrets of Karl's. The question is what he should tell the Emperor about the current state of his son, since he had a clear mission to fulfill and won't return with the objective completed. This question catches the boy off guard, as he wasn't expecting it, leaving him speechless for a few seconds while thinking about how to respond. Since Galozen's father is the emperor known as Yahello, the 44th emperor of the Baltic Empire, a cruel genius. His personality is terrible, which is why he received the nickname Demonic Emperor after starting a continental war. Because of his tyrannical nature, his hobby is to start unstoppable wars until everyone is destroyed, making him the craziest character in the entire game. While the MC is at a loss for words, the warrior asks if he should report to His Majesty, also asking if he can just tell the truth about what happened here. Not knowing what to say, he simply agrees since the question was completely unexpected. The boy asks the Marquis what will happen if the truth is reported, and the warrior says a rescue team will be sent to find the prince. Unfortunately, this would ruin all the heir's plans, so he starts thinking of a plausible excuse to give his father, as he doesn't want his journey interrupted. Suddenly, he comes up with a good idea, thinking he might be able to create a convincing scenario for the situation, calling the general in front of him to share what he has in mind. Revealing his plan, he orders that they tell His Majesty the pig prince suddenly became a prophet. And this is a known illness in this world, known as the prophet's disease, which is why the captain is shocked. In this world, occasionally, people without strong magical abilities suddenly gain the power to predict the future. Eventually, they're taken to the heavens, and the MC says it's a well-known illness throughout the empire. This makes the magistrate even more worried, because what the boy says is true. The emperor will be even more distressed to hear his son has a serious illness. But in truth, he wants him to say something else to his father, asking him to report that the third prince traveled to Orax, deep in enemy territory, to steal the vault. It's explained that the commander of the revolutionaries possesses several items once belonging to the empire, including an ancient magical ring called Tears of Dawn. This ring is relatively famous, quite powerful, and filled with magic. Even the general himself has heard of it at some point in his life. This plan will surely work, as the king will definitely recognize the story and be convinced. It was something lost by the ancestors in a distant past, which made Emperor Varishan start a war to reclaim it. The plan is to say the heir left for Orax, suffering from the prophet's disease, and intends to steal back the Tears of Dawn ring. If it's reported that way, the emperor will feel at ease, and that helps the older man too, as His Highness's life could be in danger. Reassuring him, the warrior says if everything goes well, they'll get a precious ring, and he prefers to be alone for now. After all, he knows how to defend himself like no one else, as was proven earlier. Finally convinced, a blue light appears around the man, indicating it's time to head to the portal, which excites the boy. The portal is already ready to go to the capital. Meanwhile, his followers are calling for their leader. Not wasting any time, the boy starts running, saying he's coming because he wants to reach the capital as soon as possible. However, he stops halfway, remembering something he wants to tell the knight, and calls for his attention. He gives the magistrate a tip, saying his shoulder will be hard to heal. The best way to treat is to visit the dwarves in the central desert. This makes the man curious, as every second that passes, the prince shows more signs of truly having contracted the prophet's disease. Which is funny, because it seems the man is more worried about His Highness and the illness than healing his own shoulder, repeating once more to fix it in his friend's mind that he must go to the dwarven agora. Rejoining his team, he asks the priest to continue with the teleportation, excited to finally be close to reaching his destination. Before they leave, Karl says he's a bit nervous, and the redhead agrees, saying she's not sure this is really a good idea. But as confident as ever, the boy reassures everyone, saying not to worry, this is definitely going to work. Watching everything from afar, the warrior is content, realizing he had never truly stopped to get to know His Highness until that moment. And he's at peace, because the prophet's disease only reveals things about the future. It doesn't entirely change someone's personality, as it seems to have done to the boy in front of him. He says that from now on, the choices the MC makes will be at his own risk, and with a smile repeats the phrase the boy had said earlier, only he can decide the future he'll have. That line stuns the blonde, as he didn't expect such support from someone who, just hours earlier, had been his rival in battle. Lastly, he bids farewell along with his soldiers, wishing for a peaceful and safe year of journey ahead. All of this feels very strange, as the magistrate's eyes, once full of hostility, are now filled with worry and care. Looking to the side, he understands that this is, in truth, the concern of a father for his son, who is setting out on a dangerous journey. He reflects tenderly that the warrior is simply a fool who thinks about his son from the moment he wakes up until the moment he sleeps. Before the portal activates, the man says he still doesn't know the prince well and is curious to learn more about his personality in the future. Speaking tensely, he asks the MC to visit Lloyd Mansion upon his return, as it will be a perfect place to stay. Additionally, in the mansion, there will be a well-polished sword along with a shield ready for battle, which scares the blonde. And that is a more than clear invitation for a future fight between the two. With eyes full of excitement, he says the best tests will happen in the years to come. This makes the protagonist even more tense. He agrees with the statement, but is internally afraid of what might happen. The man doesn't stop talking and wants to send more messages before saying goodbye, catching the boy's attention once again. He asks, with love in his heart, for the prince to take care of his son and ensure his safety. Not wanting to waste any more time, he rejoins his group and says he'll ensure the safety of his friends. Finally, the portal activates, transporting the entire team to the capital, while the soldiers watch everything from a distance. After a long time, the journey finally reaches its intended destination, the capital of Orax, and the entire team is gathered with a single goal in mind. However, something is different in this land. The sky is gray and snow falls without stopping, making everything feel strange. The city is extremely dirty, with a massive fortress surrounding the area. Then, the leader of the assassins welcomes the third prince to the capital of his army. This place is the headquarters of the revolutionaries, the fortress and city known as Orax. It is a gray city full of dangerous outlaws and at the same time is the base of the revolutionary army. Impressed, the boy says the city is amazing because it reflects and looks exactly like how he saw it on his computer screen. The two boys are enduring extreme cold and the MC reflects that it was hard to understand how freezing this place was just by looking at the screen. Unfortunately, the witch has to use magic to warn the two of them, complaining that her disciple always needs assistance for being so careless. Also, upon arrival, a notification appears. The mission, Escape a Crisis, has been completed. This was the first mission the protagonist received when he nearly died right after being born into this world. Having escaped the crisis with the assassins and fled from Imperial territory means he perfectly completed the mission. Recalling everything he's gone through since the beginning of his journey, up until defeating the knight in a duel, he thinks he has never felt such difficulty as now. Seeing his friend smiling, the old man asks why. The boy replies that it's nothing, but inside he's happy. Another notification appears. Upon completing his latest quests, rewards have been given to the boy. This makes him extremely excited, and he opens his equipment menu to see what prizes he received for completing the mission. The rewards were 30 gold coins, a novice equipment set, access to the inventory, and a Class D Destiny card. This makes him ecstatic since getting 30 gold coins at the beginning of the game is a very generous reward. A starter gear and inventory access are basic rewards, but still very useful to have. But what grabs the MC's attention is the Class D card, a coupon to draw a new card, stronger than his current one. His current class is F, so the chance to get a better class is a huge advantage right now. Shouting with excitement, he catches his friend's attention, thinking that this means he can replace his current card, Slave Plagiarist, with something much stronger. And to keep the good news going, he's about to reach level 10. That means he'll be able to draw a second card for his deck. If he uses the Class D coupon now, he could not only add a new card, but also release the current one and replace it with an even more powerful card. Being practically a professional player, he would normally ignore D-rank cards, but right now, this is the best news he could have received. Looking at his coupons, he imagines it would be perfect if, on the second try, he managed to pull the Archmage card. A team of soldiers spots the third prince and his subordinates and immediately orders that they all be arrested. This makes the blonde curious as he wasn't expecting this kind of reaction, and apparently they'll have to face a dangerous battle. The soldiers surround the protagonist's team with sharp spears without even identifying themselves. But being deeply knowledgeable about the game's story, the MC quickly realizes these are the Titan Special Forces, recognizable by their black armor. He warns his team that these soldiers are equivalent to the Empire's elite troops. In short, they are surrounded by knights at Karl's level. There are many of them. It would be impossible to handle this situation without getting seriously injured. It doesn't take long before one of the soldiers grabs the protagonist from behind in a strange way. Because he has a certain affinity for masochism, being held like that causes his stamina to increase, probably due to the object touching his back. Other soldiers approach and capture the prince's subordinates with authority. Seeing that his friends are about to react and fight, the boy steps in and asks them not to act rashly. He says that right now, fighting is absolutely forbidden, which worries the warrior as this could become dangerous for the prince. The only problem is that this isn't Imperial territory. There is no law or noble authority that can save them in this moment. This is a city full of outlaws desperate for revolution, and they are nobles standing in the heart of the capital. Someone approaches slowly, saying that the prince's words were correctly spoken. Barmilo appears, saying that resisting is not a good choice, surprising the MC, as it seems he has betrayed everyone. This leaves everyone in disbelief of the man's sudden betrayal, but he insists that's not what's happening. Before letting his former leader be taken away, he says he has something important to tell him. He whispers to his old friend that if he wants to survive another day, the best thing to do is not to try to deceive the archbishop of this place. Finally, the blonde understands everything that's happening and is left speechless, wondering what he should do. Because when he was about to die, he pretended to be the god of vengeance to escape sudden defeat. Now he realizes that pretending to be the god of these people in front of the Archbishop's church is a sin, and its punishment is nothing less than defeat. So many things happen at once that the protagonist forgot the old man had never believed his lie from the beginning. Trembling, sweating cold, and very afraid, he turns to his team and says that this situation is a bit complicated and apologizes. This makes his friends irritated as they don't understand what's going on, and he apologizes once again. Wasting no more time, the soldiers order that the prince and his companions be thrown into the dungeon to await judgment. The protagonist is in a dark room and someone mockingly says that somehow his daily routine has turned into being tied up like this. Trying not to show fear, he jokes with the bishop, saying that he probably collected several instruments in case someone actually impressed the god of vengeance. A majestic figure in white robes approaches and asks how the prisoner is feeling at the moment. Then, in a cheerful tone, she welcomes the boy to the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army. This is Archbishop Handel, who lost her arm many years ago in the battle against the magistrate from the duel. Tied up, the boy says this is a bit extreme for a welcoming ceremony, asking if his friends are going to be alright. Without answering, the woman sits down and picks up a piece of paper, building up mystery about what she wants to say, with the different auras surrounding her. The hero argues that he brought the assassins back without any injuries, even those who tried to hurt him, and in return, this is the hospitality he receives. The woman isn't fooled and says she's fully aware of the prince's actions as he managed to deceive all the priests perfectly. Starting to panic, someone appears behind the boy, causing him to beg to be released. Not knowing how the girl knows everything, he asks if she received a revelation from Yahello or if the men told her the whole story. Promptly, the woman replies that she already knows everything, and thanks to that, she won't need to use any of the more dangerous tools for the procedure. It's explained that this character is a bishop who was close to reaching rank 9 but was wounded in battle, forcing her to give up fighting. It doesn't take much thought to realize that the old woman is very different from the leader of the assassins, Parmelo. The old man is someone who uses his blade carelessly and defeats whoever he wants, but still has a bit of compassion in his heart. However, everything is different with Handel being a viper and the human closest to having contact with the god of vengeance, Yahello. In other words, the woman is only one step below her god, practically the second in command of the religion. Wasting no time, the blonde admits that he truly pretended to be someone he shouldn't, confirming every rumor. However, the woman shows no reaction besides an evil smile as her prisoner admits to having impressed a god. Confident, the boy says he won't apologize for lying to people who were trying to send him to the heavens, as he was forced to do it. Repeating once again, since he doesn't want to waste time in this prison, he says he really did pretend to be the god of vengeance to the woman. Speaking in defiant tone, he says he won't apologize because the Revolutionary Army's soldiers tried to send him to the afterlife, which justifies his actions. The old woman already knew this, as God himself had revealed to her that someone shameless was pretending to be what they were not. She says it won't make any difference whether the boy tells the truth or not because she already knew. And he starts to sweat cold, realizing that this is a very difficult situation to escape from alive, and he must think carefully. Nervously, he asks if Yahello also told her about the duel with Lloyd a few hours ago. Obviously, the Archbishop would understand what it feels like to fight the magistrate, as that had already happened many years ago. Afraid for his life, the boy tries to think of some way to escape, while the woman repeats the name of her oldest rival. In disbelief, the woman says she couldn't believe that the person who stole her arm and her future lost to someone like the prince. And that insult makes the boy uncomfortable, as he's no longer the pig he once was, having changed a lot since the beginning of his journey in this world. Challenging his opponent, he asks if she wants to defeat him, telling her to try because he knows she'll regret her actions in the future. And he justifies his words by saying that in 1 week an irreparable disaster will fall upon Orax. He states that the Revolutionary Army will lose power, and this will be opportunity for revenge the Archbishop has been waiting for. Confidently, the woman asks if the boy really believes what he's saying about an irreparable disaster, claiming it's all nonsense. She says that in the capital there are 2 churches with direct connection to God, Yahello's and Kisiras's. With so much divine power, she questions how they wouldn't be able to defend against some small disasters, smiling with confidence. Promptly, the boy asks if she really believes they can avoid disaster with divine power, if the cause of the disaster is the church's own members. Threateningly, the woman says many children in the capital will be sacrificed because of this evil disaster. This event will become known as the Defeated Children, and if they fail to solve it, countless children of Orax's NPCs will perish. Shouting, angry, and impatient, he says the woman won't be able to prevent the disaster on her own, and only the heir has the necessary information to solve this immediate problem. But in order to help the city, he asks to be released first, so they can have a real conversation without ropes or threats. When the woman says she'll release him, the blonde is surprised, not expecting such a generous act from his current rival. But that's not exactly what happens. The old woman orders her soldiers to drive the third prince somewhere. 3 men from the special forces approach the boy to drag him to a secret location. In reality, the prince is being dragged to the deepest and most dangerous part of the dungeon. And while that's happening, he asks the soldiers to take him more slowly. Suddenly, he's kicked into the cell and left to his own fate there. Fallen to the ground and in pain, he asks the woman how she could do this, saying this treatment has gone too far. Someone inside the dungeon recognizes the prince and gets excited, thinking he came here to save them. The person is the warrior who is happy because he believed his friend would come rescue everyone. But breaking the expectation, the MC says he's just like everyone else, also imprisoned in the dungeon. Worried about what might happen, he approaches his companion and asks if he's okay and where the magic teacher is. But actually, looking to the other side of the room, we see a feast and some witches relaxing on an extremely comfortable bed. This shocks the prisoner as his companions are relaxing while he went through horrible treatment. He wonders what kind of discrimination this is, since just minutes ago he was in the torture room while his comrades were eating the best food. And the girl explains that she managed to sleep so well in this kind of situation because she was full of food and lying on a comfortable bed, and anyone would be able to fall asleep easily under those conditions, complaining that it was the prince himself who made her eat dried meat for days until she couldn't take it anymore. Still complaining, she says she's extremely tired and asked her friend to be quiet while there are still good things to enjoy. And what she says is true, since in recent days they traveled through mountains and forests for a goal that wasn't even theirs, suffering beyond measure. In the digital game, an NPC follows the player 24 hours a day without complaining or thinking. While reflecting, the boy asks if his highness is dealing with some problem, but concludes it must just be extreme hunger. So they sit and call their friend to join them with a banquet full of meats laid out. He finally understands that the people in this game are real, alive, and breathing like everyone else, and should be treated as humans, not as NPCs. Thinking he knew everything about the game, he hadn't realized that inside this world, things work differently, as if it were real life. While eating, the boy catches his friend's attention to ask if he met the Archbishop, which surprises the MC since that happened only minutes ago and he didn't know how his friend got that information. In truth, it's explained that Barmilo told them when he came to deliver the food. Fortunately, the Church of the God of Vengeance wasn't planning to do anything to the prince, but it seems there's some kind of opposition, and that's why they couldn't openly welcome the boy, because opinions in the capital are divided. After reflecting a bit, the blonde realizes there is another very powerful religious force in the city of Orax, the Church of Kiziris, which worships a different god. Barmilo, when delivering the food, also mentioned the faction conflicts in the region. And in Orax, there are 6 different factions, each with a unique brazier and diverse goals. At the moment, the team is imprisoned in the Church of Yahello, one of the 6 factions. The opposing faction is the Church of Kiziris, led by nuns and composed mostly of women. There are also the border guards, the city guards, and the original corporates of the Revolutionary Army. Lastly, and one of the most important, are the Titan Special Forces, directly commanded by the leader and equivalent to the Imperial Army. It's said that the Church of the Nuns insists that His Highness is an enemy and constantly demands that he be either expelled or sent to the heavens. That's why the city received the boy's arrival so harshly, even if they didn't resist him openly. Fortunately, good news arises amid all this tension. The blonde's stamina has been restored after the harsh treatment in prison. Something comes to the protagonist's mind as he considers that the city's opinions are divided on how to handle his arrival. And that means the Church of the God of Vengeance might hand him over to the opposition, putting his life at risk once again. Turning to his companion, he asks if the priest said anything else, if he actually revealed any other crucial information. The man begged the boy not to draw attention this time, as it would be very dangerous to do so in a city full of thieves. Terrified, he starts to wonder what the old man meant, as he has no idea what it could be. Someone approaches the scene elegantly and calmly, dressed in white clothing. The 3 freeze in place, waiting for the person to come closer, not daring to speak or move. Just one comment is enough to scare Galosin, making him drop his food in fear. The old woman approaches and asks if the prince waited long for something. The Archbishop apparently came to see the person she had imprisoned, as a way of humiliating him. But actually, what she's about to say isn't coming from her role as a priest, but as a person. This makes the blonde and his team quite tense, as it's rare for this woman to act outside her religious function. What the boy said earlier is bothering her greatly, making her extremely concerned about the disaster that's supposed to happen in a week. However, the word of the hero alone isn't enough to convince the priests of the church. The woman is quite intrigued, as Lore was not experienced in battle, and yet he lost to a newly arrived boy. Opening the cell, she states that she probably believes the boy heard things from the Emperor and must know information no one else does. And then, as she opens the cell, she says she chooses to believe the boy's word this time. Leaving the cell, the woman repeats once more that she's taking a risk and trusting the protagonist. She has something in mind by doing this and trusting the third prince, as she wants to prevent the disaster from happening. A system notification appears, surprising the MC, and the main objective is to escape from prison, using the help of anyone possible to solve the case and save people's lives. It is explained that the leaders of the revolution do not agree on a solution due to their differing opinions. This is quite strange, this mission appearing out of nowhere, as it should only be triggered for a character with a very close relationship with the bishop. And the trigger for this mission to appear is getting caught doing some type of illegal activity like the one the protagonist was involved in. He wonders if this is the kind of treatment one gets for being considered someone's friend, reflecting that maybe people in this world form friendships differently. A doubt arises in the blonde's mind, and he asks the woman, why are they no longer enemies, since pretending to be a god is an unforgivable crime? He curiously asks why she suddenly believes his words and wants to risk everything. The woman stays silent for a few seconds, just staring at her new colleague's face, as she has a lot on her mind. In truth, it's explained that the disaster the prince mentioned was already being discussed and was known, which is why she accepted his help. The day before, the god of vengeance made a revelation to the high priest and said the lives of the capital's children were at risk. And to the shame of the revolutionary army, a member from within the cult itself is responsible for this tragic event. Knowing the game's story, the blonde is certain that what the woman said is true. There are too many traitors to count on one hand in this game, just like the Viscount who betrayed the Empire a few days ago. The tragedy that will happen in Orax is the work of a member of the revolution, and the Church of Kiziris is located just ahead of the Church of the God of Vengeance. And that's where the heartless NPC is hiding before the calamity occurs. The woman explains that although she already knew about this, she was not told how to prevent the disaster, only given a hint that it would definitely happen. It is explained that Yahello likes to intervene in human problems only to create situations that require great vengeance, thus via his own power. And at that very moment, Barmillo says his church is investigating the people behind the disaster that is about to happen. Surrounded by assassins, the blonde reflects that the traitor is also a member of the revolutionary army and is very well hidden, making him hard to find. Because this man can observe movements inside the church, and when the prince spoke about the disaster, the old woman considered many possibilities. And the first is that he might be a double agent sent by the Empire, who heard this information somewhere. Approaching the boy, the girl says she's heard many rumors about the hair, and they seem false since he is quite different from what people say. In fact, she says the boy has a bright energy and aura, unlike the rumors that describe him as a fat glutton. This makes the boy embarrassed, as each day that passes proves that the rumors about him are no longer true. The one repeats that the rumors about the hair said he only knew how to eat and drink and wasn't like a real human, always making ridiculous demands of his servants. This impresses the boy, as his new friend is using a kind voice to say such harsh things. The redhead, having faced many problems since the beginning of the journey, confirms that the last rumor is not a lie. But returning to the serious conversation, the prince says it's a lie that he is a double agent. He explains that he didn't get this information from anyone else and affirms that the Church of Kiziris is about to take action against innocent young boys. This leaves everyone frightened, as 1 week is a very short time to solve such a huge problem. This tragedy will happen on the day of the Red Wind Ritual, where many children gather. This ritual is very unknown. Not even the sorceress read about it in the vast Imperial Library. In truth, it is a coming-of-age ceremony for the boys of the Industrial Revolution to become real men, like a rite of growing older. And the one planning the calamity is going to wait for a large group of boys to gather in one place and then make their plans succeed. It is known that the children will be brutally forced to ascend to the heavens before reaching adulthood, and this is a cruel event that makes the boy deeply uncomfortable. The burning question is why the boys are being targeted, and it's explained that every boy in the capital, upon becoming an adult, will become a soldier in the army. In fact, for a child, there are two possibilities: either become an extremely trained soldier or a man who devotes his life to faith like a priest. This actually makes the knight even more confused, since in theory, these boys would enter the church in the future, and that would be a loss. But in truth, the Church of Kiziris does not accept men as priests, because the goddess of deception only accepts women or men who wish to become women, serving them in full devotion. The warrior becomes very curious to know what it means to be a man who becomes a woman, and in his mind an image forms of the two of them wearing nun outfits and wielding brooms as weapons. The redhead says her problem is just that simple, there's no need to defeat them, but that's not what the boy meant. She explains that if you enter their church, you must devote yourself 100%, and they will transform you into a perfect woman using their mysterious magic. This greatly frightens the knight, who didn't know something like that existed in this world. It's beyond his imagination. Then the boy asks if his friend wants to become a priest of the rival church, and he, afraid, says he's happy the way he is right now. Reflecting a bit, he then asks if this means the church will eliminate every boy who isn't going to join them as a priest in the future. And that's exactly what will happen. Every boy who could become a resource for other factions will be eliminated, just as I say this. The system notification shows the event, the boy's deaths, explaining that one of the priests of the rival church had a terrible idea for the rebirth of his power. Another notification explains that the decision was made to eliminate the boys to reduce the chance of them becoming adults and joining other rival factions. And the disaster will take place on the day of the Red Wind Ritual, where all the boys gather, and if no one stops it, only screams and sorrow will be heard during the ceremony. It doesn't take a genius to understand that the boy is telling the truth, because the plan and date match perfectly. Irritated, the boy asks why such a horrible faction exists in this world, like this church of nuns. Wanting to stop the problem, he begins heading toward the rival church to deal with it himself, but the MC asks him to calm down, because if he goes alone now, the first to be eliminated will be the knight, since the place is full of powerful rank 6 individuals. Orax is a place built for people with terrifying power, and it's extremely difficult for a 6-star warrior to survive there without help. The sorceress approaches, apologizing as she believes her magic won't be much help in this terrible situation. Unfortunately, the protagonist team is strong, but in this context, they're just cannon fodder, which forces the hero to come up with a plan. To explain this, as always, the woman says it was the right decision to let the prince escape from prison, since he is intelligent and can help. She states that she doesn't know how the boy has such clear details, but that doesn't stop her from asking for his help. Approaching, she makes a formal and respectful request to the prince, pleading with him not to let the children become victims. Then the mission's Savior of the Children is generated and a system notification appears, exciting the MC. The objective is to stop the rival church and protect all the children being rewarded with relics from the Church of Vengeance. This makes the protagonist very excited and eager to finally complete the mission, as he will be able to walk freely in the capital without fear. Receiving another mission excites the protagonist because now he'll have the opportunity to save hundreds of children and be seen as a hero of the city. One of the rewards is a reliquary from the church, and with this item he will be recognized as a religious member, gaining free access to do many things. He finally receives the rewards from the previous mission, which were being released by the bishop, obtaining a transit card for the capital, and 3 other things. Even as the prince of the empire, he now can travel freely throughout the territory. He gets excited because once the rumors start about him saving the city's children, things will only get better. He'll probably be considered the savior of the city and everyone will adore him, having no more reason to think poorly of the prince. He imagines himself in the future with all the guards celebrating his name and enjoying his personality wherever he goes. The boy gets so lost in these thoughts that he starts drooling, making his friend call his attention back to reality. Suddenly, he realizes that he's still not in a favorable situation, being surrounded by black armored soldiers watching his every move. Unfortunately, the Titan Special Forces will still be an exception, even if he saves the city, because they are tough to deal with. But regardless of that, his main plan is to complete the mission, since it will bring him several benefits. In fact, his main goal in completing the mission is that the dragon's nest will be opened, and he will finally get his first mount. So he needs to hurry and finish the mission as soon as possible to get his first dragon and be considered the newest rider of his generation. Suddenly, the bishop appears, startling the boy, asking if something is wrong with him since he's acting a bit strange. Pretending to be clueless, he lies and says everything is fine, that what's happening is just pain from having been tied up too tightly earlier. Adding to his story, he says the way the woman looked at him earlier, even though she did nothing, hurt his feelings. Acting desperate, he asks if he came to Orax only to be mistreated, saying he feels ashamed just thinking about it. Being a great liar, he says he might start crying at any moment, making the woman say she wouldn't be able to help in that situation. Saying he already knew everything, the MC states that the woman had to reassure both the Titan Special Forces and the rival church, which is why she was stuck in that dilemma. Making an excited gesture, he asks to add more to it, implying more fun. What he probably wants is gold coins, and the woman asks if that's really what he's after. Without thinking much, the blonde says that's exactly what he wants. About 50 little gold coins for his enjoyment, leaving everyone stunned since that is an extremely high amount for medieval times, and it's hard to convince someone that this is fair. The question that remains is how someone from the royal family is asking for money in a situation like this, but the protagonist is already prepared with answers at the tip of his tongue. Knowing that everything in this game revolves around money, he asks himself how many good items he'll need to save the city. Because the funds of an average hero are 10 gold coins and an old sword, completely useless in such a critical situation. Usually, businessmen provide the funds for heroes to save the city, and that seems like the right thing to do. Approaching the woman to finalize the deal, he thinks that the more money he gets, the better, and the greater his chances of completing the mission. Without much thought, the woman says she'll give him the 50 gold coins because she believes in the boy, and a system notification shows that the boy has successfully negotiated with a friendly NPC. He gains the title of beginner negotiator and receives the 50 coins through negotiation. Receiving a sack full of coins to spend wherever he wants in the city, it's expected that the boy will use these resources wisely. Loving the money, he walks through the city celebrating, saying he's very pleased to have received it. He's excited to spend, reflecting that when you get a mission from an NPC, you have to negotiate like this. And that's what being experienced in the game means. The boy's team is outraged, asking where the guy who used to spend money like water is gone, since now he's asking others for money. His team seems to have 2 very different opinions from each other. But now is not the time to worry about small things like that because there's a big mission ahead, and he's excited to use his precious gold. It's almost midnight now, meaning another day passes, bringing them closer to the day of the massacre. This means the rival church is probably already moving to fulfill its goal at this moment, and now only a few days remain until the Red Wind ritual. Then the warrior asks for his sword back, calling it Diamond, which greatly surprises the blonde. He doesn't want to keep it in his inventory since it has no use, so he takes it out and hands it back to his battle partner. However, the redhead wonders if it makes sense to give the sword back, as it would probably be useful for the mission, though a single blade won't be enough. In truth, they will need much better items, drawing the high priest's attention to ask if he has more information about that. She asks if he remembers when they were wandering through the forests together, but the man pretends not to understand. She repeats the promise the old man made, that if the priest returned safely to the city, he would provide an item. He states that this was a promise made in the name of the god of vengeance, which makes the man irritated by what was previously said, as it's a very big favor to ask. But even though the boy invoked the name of his god earlier, he says the boy can't make such a ridiculous request. However, the boy says it's nothing too serious. He just needs to sneak into the study room of the Revolutionary Army's leader and get the glasses. This makes the old man tense, asking what exactly the boy means by that, since it's a very complicated mission to carry out alone. Then the boy repeats himself, but that's not what the old man meant. He actually asks if the request is really to break in and steal an item from an important army member. Pretending to be clueless, the protagonist says his friend can do it, so he asks him not to say things like, "God forbid." Not knowing much, the old man asks what this item is as he has never heard of such a thing. In fact, this is the name of a pair of magical glasses very important to completing the mission. This accessory was surprisingly created by the hands of a demon and had the effect of helping the wearer identify objects and weapons from a distance. Excited, the MC explains that it's an excellent item that shows the trajectory of weapons like bows and arrows. And with it, he'll be able to learn the aiming skill, since if you know where the arrow will land, you can make sure your shots always hit the target. To avoid alarming the man, he says to think of it as just a temporary loan. The capital is a tomb for the dead, and it's a famous map that even makes high-level, experienced players humble due to its difficulty. This place is full of overpowered NPCs and is extremely hard to enter as a beginner in the game. Besides that, its surroundings are filled with powerful monsters like ferocious wolves ready to tear apart anyone who gets close. Even experienced players have suffered many defeats in this area, including the protagonist. This is the most hellish place for high-level players, which is why it's so interesting for farming XP. For the protagonist, there's no better place to get easy loot early in the game since there are always good items you can claim under the right conditions. That same night, the priest sneaks into the leader's study room, wondering what would happen to him if he were caught stealing from such an important man. Fortunately, the protagonist knows the leader is busy with another event at the moment, so there's no need to worry, and the man will be safe. While examining all the items in the room, the old man wonders how the prince knows so much about the world and about this other event. In addition to that, these items have the highest quality in the system to match the map's difficulty. While thinking that this place is a graveyard for low-level players, he bumps into something which could be his death sentence. Two con artists approach and try to rob the protagonist, pretending one of their hands is broken and asking what the prince will do about it. The condition to heal the hand is for him to give them all the money he has so they can go to the doctor. This is a lie, of course. The two men are street thieves who harass passersby. Starting to sweat from impatience, the blonde begins to wonder how he ended up falling into such a cliché. Fortunately, these guys make the boy quite happy as their levels are low and they're the perfect type of target for training and gaining cheap XP. The three men seem confident they'll get easy money from the hare, but that's not what's going to happen, because he's level 9 and his rivals are the perfect opponents to quickly gain combat experience. However, suddenly the warrior steps in front, saying he'll handle everything, ruining the MC's plan. He quickly attacks the two swords, destroying them instantly with a skill called Bear Hunt. Watching everything from a distance, the blonde thinks his friend is very cruel for using such a powerful skill on low-level NPCs. However, in the middle of the fight, the boy asks his friend to stop fighting, making him wonder what's wrong with that. But actually, the blonde explains that he's the one who wants to fight and doesn't want anyone getting in his way. He reflects that if he lets him continue, his friend will end up getting the experience points. Unfortunately, this feels wrong as he's stopping his escort knight from doing his usual duties, making the knight feel useless. Irritated, he approaches the prince saying that there is no noble in the world who fights against street thieves. Then the two begin an argument, with the protagonist claiming he fought bravely against one of the greatest fighters in the kingdom and won. However, in the background, the redhead arrives, telling the hero to step back and let the prince fight this time. She explains that Jalosid must learn to protect himself because there will be moments in his life when he won't be accompanied by anyone and will need to act. In places like this, the authority of the royal family can't protect him, and even locations such as the Imperial Palace are no longer that safe. The man argues that the prince has his whole team to protect him and doesn't need to deal with these problems alone. The woman agrees and says that clearly they do their best to protect him, but that won't work in every situation. She asks a question: for how long will the two of them be able to do this job of protection? After all, they're only human beings who are destined to go to heaven at some point. She asks that they trust in Galosin's abilities and let him fight, at least this time on his own. She argues that this is another way to show loyalty to their lord, and this argument is enough to convince the knight. He then apologizes for thinking his highness was too limited to perform dangerous tasks, and the prince responds by telling him to rethink his attitude in the future. Thanking her, his teacher observes as his opponents get up, excited to begin a fight. Excited, he tells the man in red to come at him with everything in a one-on-one battle. Cracking his fingers, the other blonde says the prince should come whenever he's ready. That's exactly what he wanted. Before the fight begins, the prince calls his team's attention, warning that this doesn't mean they shouldn't interfere if things go badly. He says that if the situation becomes too dangerous, he wants both of them to try and rescue him immediately, before things get worse. This leaves the two of them confused, but after a moment of reflection, they understand and let their lord handle it for now. The man complains that his opponent talks too much and punches him squarely in the face, pushing him far back. Then, a system notification appears, saying the protagonist has successfully defeated his opponent. Both of them are lying on the ground, and the man in red says he doesn't know where his opponent came from, but he fights really well, offering praise. The one lying wounded says it hurts a lot and asks if the guy was really trying to send him to heaven. And the prince explains that obviously he was, because if he doesn't defeat his opponent, he'll be the one who gets defeated. Reflecting, he remembers his fight with the Marquis and thinks that back then he had no intention of sending the other to a better place. However, here, and with these guys from the beginning, things are very different. Every step is a serious risk to one's life. Suddenly, a magical light begins to glow on the protagonist's body, surprising him. It's his friend and teacher healing him with a restoration spell called Radiant Shine. While lying on the ground, he realizes that to survive in this world, he needs to know how to handle himself through fighting. This time, no one went to heaven, but the game is quite cruel, and it's not uncommon for people to be defeated and never return to life. He finally realizes that in the future, he'll have to take someone's right to live with his own hands, and that deeply disturbs the MC. Looking at his teacher after this tense moment, he begins to say something about fighting people. Finishing the sentence, he says that getting into fights with others isn't easy, and that's everything he's thinking about right now. Fortunately, the woman is happy with his progress and praises him, saying he's learning very well and improving every moment. She says that survival and hardship go hand in hand, and that sounds strange to the protagonist, as if he's receiving advice from a 20-year-old child. But in reality, it's clearly the wisdom and experience accumulated from her past lives as a sorcerer. Looking at his opponents, he says he knows they're only pretending to be unconscious to avoid joining the fight after that overwhelming defeat. Two of the street thieves look at each other irritated because they didn't expect their plan to be discovered once again. Then, afraid of getting beaten up again, they start running in the opposite direction from the hero. Suddenly, angry, the boy grabs his friend's sword and starts running toward his opponents, looking to finish the fight. He realizes this is a common tactic among newcomers who are just entering the city. The plan is to run away and call for other allies who are also thieves. And we see that this is exactly what's happening. The boy in green is running at full speed, calling out to his comrades, shouting that there's an intruder in the area. It's common practice for this kind of people to group up to defeat their enemies, but this irritates the blonde as he refuses to be treated like just another fool. Running with sword in hand, he says he's seen enough of this trick and knows exactly how to stop it by using the last ability granted by the gladiator class. He never thought he would need to use this useless technique in the city, but things turned out differently as he strikes his rival. The skill is called Affinity for Sadism, and it hits the enemy with an attack that causes a powerful bleeding effect, with a cooldown of 1 minute. The two bandits collapse to the ground, the pain in their backs and red liquid oozing out. This greatly irritates the protagonist as the ability doesn't deal real damage and is more of a flashy and theatrical technique. Making the best of a bad situation, he orders his opponents to kneel and call him master, saying it all with a mischievous and sadistic grin. However, his team, watching from afar, thinks this is ridiculous and inhumane to do to others. Fortunately, the blonde knows that the bandits won't be sent to heaven by this weak ability. They'll just look very injured. But in truth, the player doesn't really know if they'll die or not, because they seem to be in intense pain all over. He brushes off that thought and approaches the thieves' leader, saying that now it's his turn to suffer. A system notification shows that the alleyway rookie is having an abnormal reaction, extreme fear. He drops to his knees and begs for his life as the MC approaches with his sharp sword. And that's quite surprising, as he wasn't expecting such a tense reaction from someone who was trying to beat him up just minutes earlier. The other two henchmen are still lying on the ground with their backs exposed, realizing it doesn't hurt at all. It's just red, but it wouldn't be smart to react or try to fight. The bandit is begging desperately, stating he'll do anything his opponent commands. And this begins to interest the protagonist, since he now has a world of possibilities to order the man around. He starts smiling as many ideas run through his head, and the rival confirms again that he will do absolutely anything he's told. His first order is to identify himself and reveal his name to the team, Thompson. Approaching, the MC says that name is way too cliche, causing the man to apologize and say he'll change it immediately. He admits that his late mother gave him that name, but says he'll change it anyway. What the protagonist really wants right now is a guide around the city, and that's the main favor he's going to ask of Thompson. He states that he'll need a guide to walk through the dark alley of the city of Orax, which is a very dangerous place and fatal for newcomers. Even the man in red is startled, since that's not an area people are supposed to go and new travelers in the city shouldn't risk entering. But the prince isn't afraid of that and reassures his new tour guide with an enthusiastic expression. While even getting close to the man, he repeats the question. Will he really do everything he's ordered to? Still in pain from the fight just minutes ago, the bandit leader nervously affirms that he'll do everything, calling the boy in front of him master. A system notification shows that another event called Area Guide has been initiated. The guide, trembling, asks if his master is sure about this, since he can't guarantee they'll make it out alive if they enter the black market. As they walk, the blonde reflects that the man in front of him is so scared, he'll do anything to avoid another fight. And that actually makes the protagonist feel a little guilty. But since they were the ones who started the fight earlier, he simply used his rights and took advantage of those who deserved it. The warrior, crying, asks how his friend could cut people like that, and the redhead complains that she can't believe her disciple has become such a cruel person. Fortunately, the boy explains that it was just a theatrical scene, and no one was seriously hurt. Telling a lie, the boy justifies it by saying the black dragon inside his body taught him, and suddenly the man says they've arrived at the black market. The entrance to the place is a large gray iron gate that gives off a strong sense of authority and pushes away anyone who shouldn't be nearby. From now on, the blonde orders them not to say anything that might reveal his identity, to prevent unnecessary people from finding out he's a noble. Calling him Your Highness is now forbidden, and Master is the most appropriate way to address him. However, the redhead says she'll call him whatever she wants, since she wasn't calling him Your Highness anyway. Finally, having fulfilled his role, Thompson asks if he can go home now, but apparently, the hero isn't willing to let him leave just yet, because to enter the black market, an introduction from someone well known in the area is required, and that's the role of the man in red. Since it's his team's first time here, they're not recognized enough to enter this shady area, which is why the protagonist intends to make full use of the event's opportunity. It's explained that although he's not known in the capital, when a visitor arrives from another region, someone from the dark alley can offer them services. Approaching Thompson, he says the man must introduce them to the place, but Thompson begs not to, since the black market is truly terrifying. Reflecting on it, the protagonist knows the black market is dangerous, especially for people like the noble and for Thompson, who's just a rookie from the streets. It's a place where a flying knife can strike your back without any warning at the slightest mistake. On the other hand, it's also a place full of precious items that are worth the risk of losing one's life. Excited, the MC feels no fear, arguing that they should try something no one has tried before, trying to calm his guide down. Even scared, the boy approaches the door while his master tells him not to worry, saying that if anything happens, he'll find a way to save him. From behind the door, a voice asks who's knocking and if the person wants to be sent to hell. When the blonde identifies himself, the person behind the gate doesn't recognize the name, making the situation even tenser. The person inside the black market doesn't want to let anyone in, telling them to go home and sleep while still acting polite. Not giving up, he says he has a few guests who might be of interest to the black market. As soon as the person hears about having guests, the door is opened promptly, clearly with some kind of plan already forming in their mind. The guard approaches, wondering aloud why all the kids these days are so reckless. Also approaching, the blonde realizes people are looking down on him because of his plain clothing, and that maybe wearing expensive clothes would fix that. He spends a few seconds considering that possibility, thinking it might be the solution to his current problems. Suddenly, the gatekeeper starts arguing with the other blonde, cursing him in multiple ways for opening the door. Grabbing his opponent by the collar, he asks if he wants to go to heaven without any skin left on his body. Saving the situation, the prince pulls a sack of coins from his pocket, asking why there's so much chaos and wondering aloud if the man wants to start a new business. This makes the guard's eyes light up with greed, and he accepts the sack of coins on the spot, which is enough to let the team into the black market. Excited, he hands over the sack, asking if 80 gold coins are enough to pay the entrance fee. His plan is to risk all his money to make them believe in his bluff, that he's not just a noble in disguise. However, even with the sack in hand, the guard gives it back, saying that the black market doesn't charge an entrance fee. They just need to check if someone is worth doing business with. Fortunately, because he trusted them with his money and it was returned, he ends up getting an entrance pass without having to spend a single coin. Before going in, he asks if his guy can come along, which makes the man very upset, since he thought he was done with the job. Stepping forward, the watchwoman tells the man in red to guide the new guests properly, slapping him on the head a few times while he sweats nervously. Fortunately, the more money a character adds, the better the black market and its henchmen treat them with warm welcomes, because they believe they caught a big fish, an easy target to rob, and they won't hesitate to do just that. But before that happens, the protagonist reflects that he's the one who will be preparing to steal things from others. The black market area is vast and help will be needed to find the best items. The team is now united, walking with the goal of finding the best equipment so the prince can prevent the upcoming catastrophe. Irritated, the warrior complains that the paths are complicated and feel like a labyrinth. He can't even remember the way they came. But the redhead is concentrating, so she asks for silence so she won't be disturbed. This area really is very strange, with countless doors leading to bizarre and even more dangerous places. This kind of location is commonly associated with illicit substances, gambling, and unauthorized human trafficking. In each of these places, dangerous transactions take place, and the labyrinth is designed this way to quickly evacuate clients and products from this part of the city if the guards invade. The worst possible thing that can happen is for an unfamiliar visitor to open the wrong door. This could result in a fatal tragedy. Unfortunately, the criminal doesn't know much about the streets in this area and may not be very helpful to the protagonist's goal. Fortunately, being a professional in the game, he says he'll take care of everything, so he asks everyone not to worry. This makes Carls quite curious, as his friend was supposed to be a newcomer to the black market, and it's strange that he seems so confident and eager to handle everything. The request from now on is to look for a room that makes absolutely no noise. Normally, a noisy room is much better when you're in the black market, but this time it's the opposite of what they're looking for. So, as they move along the path, they start listening from door to figure out if they're in the right place. And many rooms, obviously, were designed to be traps, to rob fools or the unaware, which is why the completely silent room is the correct one to enter. After quite a while searching, they finally find the right room, but strangely, there is no presence in the place. It is easily identifiable that the door is completely hidden by magic. As the blonde approaches, he says that extremely dangerous transactions happen here all the time, which scares their guide, making him nervous. But when they open the door, they see a large place that looks like a palace filled with many things and a gambling table. There are many luxury items and beautiful, elegant women catching the attention of the guests. Upon entering, the blonde says this is the real black market, and this is where things really happen. His team is disappointed because they think the prince came here just to gamble again, assuming he hadn't changed. But he reassures them, saying he came here to obtain 3 important items. The first is a bow called Quick Death, the second is a magical accessory called Forest Rosary, and lastly, and most importantly, a shield called the Balance Shield. Just thinking about these items makes the protagonist's mouth water, but he needs to stay alert. Approaching excitedly, he reflects that he came here to take the grand prize, calling it the fat cow, and that's exactly what he's going to do. However, the masked man didn't expect to see the prince in this place, and that's likely going to be a problem. The hare has the same reaction, as he thought his problems had been left behind. This makes him extremely tense, sweating cold because he knows exactly who is standing in front of him. This is the masked man who was with the priests earlier, likely the protagonist of the story. Impatiently, he asks what the MC is doing there in an irritated tone, and Gilosen replies with the same question, saying he's the one who wants to know why the boy is there. The hooded man hadn't expected to find the prince in this place and mocks him, saying that apparently he still hasn't been able to break his gambling habits. The blonde defends himself and says the man can't see anything in front of him because of his mask and that he enjoys spending time with his grandfather. Removing part of his mask, the boy says he can clearly see the pig's face without any problem. Reflecting, the MC thinks he still isn't sure why he transmigrated into this game, but for some reason he possessed the body of the crown prince. And as soon as he was born into this world, this guy was also there, strangely enough. He was a very quiet masked man who observed everything without interfering, seemingly the protagonist of the story. Just thinking about having to meet someone he hated in such an important place makes the blonde angry, saying the encounter was unpleasant. However, the stranger says he believes the two might have similar goals, leaving the hare confused. The hooded man says he managed to figure out what the boy's objective was, and apparently, he has the same one in mind. Looking into the room, he asks if the MC's goal was to get the balance shield, and apparently that's also the masked man's objective. The balance shield is a protective item, and it will be the necessary object to save the children from the catastrophe that will happen in a few days. The boy's main goal is to obtain it no matter the cost, since it is the most important item to complete his mission. The blonde notices that the man is trying to get in his way by the way he talks about his skills. This makes the two of them stare at each other like rivals as the assassin discreetly threatens him. But a thought crosses the protagonist's mind that the man in front of him may have changed factions. Although they strongly dislike each other, both were members of the Revolutionary Army, but his opponent can switch factions as many times as he wants due to the game's system, which means that if the boy sees him as an obstacle, he can join an enemy faction. And with that, the penalty for defeating team members disappears, giving the masked man the freedom to do whatever he wants with the MC. This shows that a fight between the two is inevitable in the future, but that would ruin the game's plot. While lost in thought, the man calls the prince's attention, startling him. Then he says he can't let Gilosen get the balance shield and approaches calmly. Fortunately, the prince's team won't just stand by, and if a fight has to happen, this is their best chance to win. Another good thing about the black market is that it's a lawless area, where crime happens without punishment. The thieves in the room won't care even if someone gets sent to the afterlife in a brutal fight. But the question that remains is whether it's really worth it for the hare to do something so drastic. The other question is how he should do it if he really intends to go through with it, and whether he should use his warrior's sword to finish the job. Nervously, the blonde had expected to have to take someone's life, but he didn't think it would happen this suddenly. In fact, as he approaches, the stranger whispers to the hero that he needs help, which is strange. Still surprised, the boy asks him to repeat the sentence because he can't believe what he just heard. Nervous, the masked man says he's running out of money at the moment, but still has a little left. Embarrassed, he says he really needs the shield along with the prince. And the boy agrees that he also urgently needs the shield to complete his mission soon. The boy's plan is to pool their money and buy a pair of those magic shields, but that seems very expensive. The strategy is that if they buy two, they'll get a discount, but without responding, the MC knows this isn't a very smart plan. Trying to hold back his laughter, the blonde realizes the guy wants them to make a joint purchase to get what they want more cheaply. In short, what the man wants is a loan to buy the necessary item. Unfortunately, the protagonist doesn't want to make that kind of deal with the stranger, and all he needs is to get the shield on his own. The shield is almost out of stock, since many people are after it. Even if the man begs a lot, there's no such thing as a group discount in a place like this. However, something catches the boy's attention, a betting table, which could be a golden opportunity. So suddenly, he says he'll accept the boy's proposal and loses all his money before moving on. The boy's plan is to negotiate a joint purchase through bargaining, which is why he's asking for money up front, but the hooded man notices the MC has a strange smile. Since the man was throwing a tantrum about giving up the money, the blonde withdraws his proposal and says he'll buy it alone, but the man changes his mind. Handing over a bag with 92 gold coins, the prince is surprised as that's more money than he expected, meaning the stranger really needs the shield. Embarrassed, he says that's all he has in his pockets, worried about what will happen with it. He wonders if this guy is doing all this to stop the disaster too, which is a relief because he believes he won't become an enemy in the future. A man in purple asks if his guests have finished their conversation, and the blonde answers yes. Perceptive, the man says he heard that the two are after the balance shield, asking if that information is really true. However, the cost is 300 gold coins, since the item is one of the most valuable in the entire market. This greatly surprises the entire team as they weren't expecting such a steep price, and not even with the prince's money will it be enough to buy it. For a few seconds, he reflects on whether the man is trying to extort him as he overheard the conversation and knew they wanted to buy the shield no matter the cost. Continuing the deal, the merchant says the remaining money can be exchanged for equipment. This greatly irritates the assassin, who almost curses the man, but the hare stops him, as that would interfere with the negotiations. Bargaining, he says he'll pay whatever it takes, which confuses the merchant, who asks if the boy plans to borrow money first. Actually, the hero's proposal is something else. He asks if that in the corner is really a betting table. And it is exactly what they believe it to be, prompting the merchant to say that you can bet gold coins on a card game or maybe on a roulette. And this is exactly what the pig wants, to return to his roots and win a lot of money to buy the shield through gambling. The game the protagonist proposes to the vendor is called Death Dice, which makes the merchant very interested. This game is so obscure that even the protagonist's team doesn't know it, being famous only among hardcore gambling addicts. The criminal knows that if you lose, you don't just get robbed blind, you also get expelled from the black market. It's a very dangerous and deadly betting game, one that even the most experienced gamblers tremble to play. As the boy approaches the table, the warrior wonders what his master is doing, thinking this is all madness. However, without any fear, he says he's putting everything he has on the line, asking if they want to start already so as not to waste any more time. The merchant praises the protagonist, saying he has more courage than he appears to. This gambling game works differently, having an entire layout of his own for how it functions. A system notification shows that the minigame Death Dice has started, and now the confrontation is going to get intense. Even being a natural gambler, it's been a long time since the prince played this game. He might be a little rusty. While saying that there was a time when he was very addicted to this game, a punch hits the protagonist's face by surprise. It was the very irritated assassin, complaining that they put all his money into a risky bet that could be lost. Angrily, he demands his money back, but the boy argues that no one had enough money to buy the shield in the first place. And the blonde admits that he had planned from the beginning to gamble his money to be able to buy the shield. He asks the merchant if by winning 5 times he'll have enough money to buy the necessary item. And that's expected from someone who devoted their whole life to gambling, to know exactly how to proceed in a moment like this. Laughing, he thinks about how he lived through days when he couldn't even understand what the word confidence meant, but that will pass very soon. Thinking about the future, he reflects that everyone will call him a genius for winning a huge bag of money, enough to buy whatever he wants in the world. But that's not happening just yet, and the warrior approaches, asking how his partner is going to pull all of this off. But it's simple. It's just a gambling game. The minigame can be played by 2 to 4 people, and when it's your turn, you roll a die and move a piece according to the number that comes up. Rolling the die, the number 3 appears, indicating how many spaces he should move the piece. It's pretty easy. You just move the piece according to the number and try to reach the treasure chest on the board. On the first roll, the protagonist wins 10 gold coins, but there's still a lot to gain, since each treasure chest has a different prize. The merchant rolls a 4 on the die, landing exactly on a treasure chest, and wins 20 gold coins just from that chest. The rules are simple, and it's very easy to win money, but just as easy to lose it. The team gets tense as the game goes on, because even though it's simple, it's risky even while earning lots of money each turn. The assassin approaches the protagonist, worried since the opponent has twice as many gold coins as the MC, indicating a possible sudden defeat. Irritated, the boy tells the man to leave as he's ruining his focus with his loser's stench. The merchant notices that the guest, even when losing, stays incredibly calm, which is strange. Approaching the hooded man, he realizes there's a very odd smell coming from his clothes, while the man says he should defeat the prince for that attitude. The knight starts to feel nauseous, which makes everyone worried, as this is not the time to be distracted. They didn't come here just to be defeated. The vendor realizes that all of the prince's subordinates seem clumsy, and that he's the only one who truly knows how the world works in this place. Only 2 options remain. Either they are extremely skilled and this is all an act, or they are utterly useless fools. Wondering whether he should steal, the prince shows his true nature through his greed, while watching him excitedly continue to play. The next treasure chest contains 50 gold coins, and if he rolls at least a 5 on the die, the MC could turn the situation around. Doubting the protagonist's luck, the assassin says it's impossible to roll a 5 just because they really need it. However, being a professional gambler, the pig says it will definitely happen. He then prepares to roll as his companion grows tense, eager to see what will happen. The die hits the table, increasing the tension of the moment, because if it's lower or higher than 5, all will be lost. Fortunately, the number 5 lands exactly when needed, and the system notification confirms the result. In just 1 round, the player completely changes the course of the game and is now in the lead. Whispering, the masked man asks how that was possible, and the boy explains that it's not cheating, and he'll explain later. Actually, what was used was the system against itself, a strategy completely within the rules. The die used is the lie die, a model the dealer uses when they want a specific pattern of rolls to happen. This means the dealer knows exactly what number will come up in the next round. However, there's a unique rule in the game that can be exploited: the ability to move forward or backward. Unlike traditional games that only allow forward movement, this one also lets players move backward, which means that if the dealer knows what number will be rolled, they can plan their moves perfectly, controlling the pace of the match. Impatient, the vendor jokes that the men are having a strategy meeting. So the MC explains that first the man will create a false sense of defeat, giving hope to his opponents. But after the stakes rise, he'll take everything. That's the tactic being used. As a professional, the player says that once the pattern is identified, it's possible to use it against the system itself. Knowing that the dice pattern goes from A to Z, the current pattern is D, starting at 6 and resetting after 22 turns. After some time, the MC says he's done observing the pattern and that it's time to begin the treasure hunt with a smile on his face. Being greedy, the boy in purple suggests that with the guest winnings, the bets should be raised to make the game more competitive. Now the treasures will be worth much more, and each open chest will guarantee at least 100 gold coins, which is an excellent move for the protagonist since the balance shield costs 300 gold coins. And that fits perfectly because he plans to buy 2 of those shields, totaling 600 coins. In addition, he also wants 2 other extremely expensive items, the Forest Rosary and the Quick Death Bow. However, these items are popular, and in total, everything will cost 2,000 gold coins. The only way to reach that amount is by increasing the stakes even more. But the boy doesn't have that much money in his pocket, so he needs to think of an alternative strategy. This excites the dealer, who believes he's about to earn some easy money. Seeing that some criminals are approaching, the MC realizes that everything can be bought and sold in the black market. The knight is startled by the approach of the shadowy figures and says that, if necessary, he'll start a fight. His team trusted him to fight the greatest knight in the world, and they must trust him now as well. All of this requires a new leap of faith, and he's going to face the challenges of the gamble. However, very confident, the boy in purple says that will only happen if the guest loses. The assassin is still not convinced that everything is under control and asks if everything is really okay. But the prince calmly responds, telling him not to worry and just watch. Everything will work out in the end. From now on, the treasure chests will contain exactly the items they want: 2 shields, the Forest Rosary, and the bow. Additionally, each of the 4 chests will contain 500 gold coins. Whoever wins will walk away extremely rich. It's an absurd amount, as the boy is basically adding 4,000 gold coins to the final prize. But that's proportional to the extremely high stakes involved, and if the boy loses, his punishment will be severe. This penalty also extends to the masked man, who has already suffered a horrible punishment in the past and might experience it again. But the boy feels no fear at all. He fully trusts himself and remains calm, ready to win. During the tense death dice match, many people start laughing uncontrollably. This makes the MC wonder who is laughing. Curious, he thinks it's his companion, but it's actually his guide who is laughing uncontrollably. In reality, he is extremely nervous and scared and can't hold back laughter in moments like this. This makes the entire team uncomfortable, as the focus of the game is completely broken by the nervousness. The game must go on, and that's exactly what the boy in purple says, eager to win all the protagonist's money. The boy's piece is only 7 steps away from the treasure chest, but the next turn belongs to his opponent, and he maintains an excited smile, certain he'll profit easily. Following the dice pattern, the number 2 appears, giving the dealer some room to maneuver. The protagonist is happy, as everything is going according to pattern, so he rolls his die to see the next number. The number 4 comes up, which means that on the next roll, the dealer will reach the treasure chest with a 5. As he prepares to roll, the MC knows he has a plan up his sleeve and won't let this happen without a price. The die rolls slowly across the table, bouncing and spinning, increasing the tension of the moment. With a confident smile, the protagonist reflects that this time it's the opponent who's going to eat spoiled food. But something unexpected happens. The die breaks the pattern. The number 6 appears on the table, completely ruining the expected move. Mocking, the hare asks if his opponent suddenly has a headache, but he only replies that he has a slight sore throat. Slowly and with his head down, the dealer moves his piece 1 space past the treasure chest. Fortunately, the MC still has a chance to claim it. Rolling the die, the gambler says the man's throat must be dry, which is why he coughed earlier. On his roll, the number 3 appears on the table, letting him reach and open a treasure chest. The system notification reveals that the boy earned 500 gold coins in a single move. This surprises the merchant, who realizes he's showing too many of his expressions during the game. With that, the hare takes a deep breath as he sees all the money he's earned. With every turn, he gets closer to the final prize. The assassin approaches the boy and asks how he did that, because he's certain the number 6 wasn't just a coincidence. But the protagonist replies that it's simple to manipulate the game's pattern. You just have to shake the die correctly before rolling. For example, if the boy wants a 6 to appear, the trick is to shake the die twice in the hand before throwing it. This shocks the hooded man, as it's much simpler than it seems, and he realizes the game isn't actually that hard. When the pig used to play this game, he always took notes, carefully identifying patterns. Handing the die to his opponent, the boy confidently says that it's not him being cheated, it's the game's dealer. All experienced players know this trick. If he had to name it, he'd call it the die of lies, which makes his opponent nervous, thinking something's wrong. This game ends when one of the players returns to the starting point, regardless of win or loss. With most of the treasure in hand, the protagonist is already thinking about returning to the start as soon as possible to end the match. Confident, he mocks by saying the opponent can still get the next treasure chest without trying too hard. Nervous and sweating, the opponent replies that the die in this game is purely based on luck, and then throws it. It lands exactly on the number he wanted, bringing relief and happiness to the merchant, at least for now. Trying to deceive the man, he says he had a lot of luck last time, and maybe he's hoping for the same luck again, so that the die lands on number 7. And that's exactly what happens. It lands on number 6. However, to avoid raising more suspicion, he doesn't change the game's pattern, letting it fall on the correct number to keep up his momentary bluff. Rolling the die once more, the number 3 comes up, increasing the tension of the move. As he moves the die, the purple one says that the last time he played, he didn't have this kind of pattern shifting issue, and he decides to move his piece 3 spaces forward, reaching a treasure chest. Receiving all the gold coins from the chest, he thinks that maybe it was just a coincidence that the wrong number came up in the last round. Stay in character so no one becomes suspicious. The blonde says that his opponent has won once again, building a sense of trust in the game. However, the killer approaches, asking why his friend gave the chest so easily to the merchant, since the right thing is to take everything possible in the match. But the plan is to give the man the impression that he's in control of the situation and winning the game, because if he gets scared and returns to the starting point, the game will end in defeat. So the hooded man asks if his comrade intends to deceive the opponent to a point where he can no longer return to the start, and that is exactly what he's going to do. What no one knows is that this game is already in the protagonist's hands, and he had already won before it even began. And it will be too late when his opponent realizes he's trapped in his snare. The number 4 appears and someone opens the treasure chest, managing to acquire the first shield of the balance. This move leaves the vendor extremely impressed, as he didn't expect the game to turn so quickly, but there is still hope of winning. The shield of the balance was added to the protagonist's inventory, with only the remaining items left to collect. This surprises the team, as they didn't expect the loser of their leader to have talent for this kind of thing. But he knows the dealer's pieces will soon reach the middle of the board, and that means the moment to pass will be the moment to collect all the chests. The frustration of the croupier is noticeable, as he realizes the game is becoming more intense with each round. Mockingly, the MC asks if his opponent is okay, since he seems tense now that an important item was acquired. Irritated, he says the protagonist is talking too much, considering he only took 2 chests, and seems to have forgotten the current situation. He threatens that the prince will soon go bankrupt and lose the entire bet, and with that, he'll be imprisoned and never see the sun again. Continuing to threaten, he says the game is worth thousands of gold coins, so it would be great to keep winning like this without stopping. However, the protagonists have been calculating the patterns since the beginning, which means the next treasure chest will be difficult to obtain. Cleverly, the masked man notices this, and as he approaches the MC, the latter complains not to get so close, since his bad smell is making him nauseous. Reflecting, he thinks of a way to get the treasure chest that contains the other shield, but knows that if he changes the pattern again, it will be recorded. Excited to win, the purple one asks his guest, the die, to finally make the winning move. In addition, to make matters worse, his opponent isn't far from getting close to the starting point. Getting tense, he thinks he can't look suspicious and really needs the rosary and the bow to save the children. To help his partner, the masked man lets out a loud cough, drawing everyone's attention to the game. Then suddenly, he jumps in front of the table and the board to disrupt the whole match and perhaps change the course of the game. However, this wasn't part of the protagonist's plan, who gets startled by this sudden action, and he yells at Herbal while watching the board fall to the ground and the match come undone. The board hits the ground, completely ruining the game and breaking up the match. Meanwhile, the masked man is lying on top of the protagonist, who keeps looking at the die from a distance. It's possible to see that the number 5 landed face up, aiding one of the 2 in their move. The die landed as expected, which makes the pig wonder what his friend was thinking with such a strange move. Irritated, he asks why a man did something when no one asked him to, as it could have ruined everything. He does it because his fortune is also at stake, but the hero complains, asking him to back off again, since the smell is horrible and makes him nauseous. Then he pauses for a few seconds to try to understand where that smell is coming from and what exactly it is. In fact, it's a kind of floral scent that makes his head dizzy and tired. He wonders whether it's really coming from his friend, or if he's going crazy, or maybe he's developing some sort of preference for different perfumes. Annoyed and slightly unhinged, he yells to himself that he would never have such a strange preference, startling everyone. But he's relieved that this isn't a chess or card game, because it's impossible to know the exact positions. He slowly picks up the die, thinking about what to do next, with the board once again in the right place. Rolling the die once more, the number that comes up is 1. That's exactly what the vendor does, moving his piece 1 square forward, closer to the chest. The prince jokes that this is a wasted opportunity, as he lost the chance to obtain the gold chest and is now back in the same spot. Both are in the same place. Pretending not to know what number will come up, he rolls once more, saying he hopes it lands on 4. And with that, he manages to open the 4th treasure chest, acquiring the 2nd necessary shield from his friend. Seeing that he's about to lose, the croupier gets nervous, thinking his opponent must be doing something to cheat. Trying to analyze the game, he believes this isn't a coincidence, and that his rival might be using a trick with the dice to win. Knowing he's going to win, the hare teases, asking why he's cheering and banging on the table all the time, almost falling over because of it. He then asks his friend to apologize for the fall he had to support the lie within the match. Wondering if it was all a trap, he asks his guest to be more careful when playing to avoid future problems. Finally, the boy realizes that his enemy has started to doubt the authenticity of the game, and thanks to his partner, he doesn't know what move will be made next, but he believes he'll keep advancing, thinking that if he gets the bow, the rosary, and the gold from the last chest, there's still a strong chance of winning. With an audience behind him, he reflects that even though both shields have already been acquired, his opponent must still believe there's a way to turn the game around, and his move is to advance his piece 4 squares, getting closer to the exit. Rolling once again, the number 4 comes up, which means that next he'll roll a 6 and get the treasure chest. Fortunately, the protagonist is winning, having managed to acquire 3 of his opponent's treasure chests. Even with all the advantage, the protagonist cannot relax and starts planning his next moves, because he has already pushed his opponent to a point where most people would lose their composure yet he remains calm, as expected from a veteran of the black market. But from the beginning of the game, the boy had a plan in mind to win and gain as much gold as possible, because his rival's calmness is the very trap he had planned from the start. And then seeing that the die landed on 6, the croupier is left speechless as he gets closer and closer to defeat. Nervous and sweating cold, he rolls the die once again, hoping to win. And the number that lands is 6 once more, a great coincidence. He begins to use the trick of shaking to gain an advantage, and the next number to fall will be 1, since it was shaken twice. The MC realizes that it's as if the man is asking him the secret question to find out whether he knows the dice's secret. This round belongs to the protagonist, who is confident he will win. With an evil grin on his face, he says he's going to answer the vendor's question. Even though suspicions are growing, it's already too late to change the course of the game, and the die roll lands on 6. Thus, the 5th treasure chest is opened, giving the protagonist 500 gold coins. The dealer's pawn is already more than halfway from the starting point, so there's no need to hide anything. Surprised, the man asks since when the prince knew about this secret. The blonde, confident and calm, responds that he knew about it from the very beginning, which is why he's winning so much. Mocking everyone, he says that thanks to this, he'll be able to eat at banquet tonight. Irritated, the purple one asks who he is and who sent him to play this game tonight. Calmly, the MC asks if what the man really wants to know is where he's from, saying he comes from a place that is a paradise for insane mages. Annoyed, the vendor asks if the boy is really joking in a situation like this, but he replies that insane mages really do exist. Almost revealing the whole secret, the warrior nearly lets slip that his master is the emperor's son. In order to win, he quotes a famous saying, that if a game starts, it must continue to the end, no matter what happens, and that's the rule of the black market. And it's well known that whoever breaks one of these rules, the consequences are catastrophic, potentially even losing a hand. Looking at the crowd behind him, the blonde asks his opponent if he called all those people just to be accomplices to everything. Nervous, the man realizes that so many people have ended up hurting his chances because now he'll have to continue the match. The hero asks the merchant what he values more, his hand or the goods he has at stake. Annoyed, he yells at his rival to shut up and rolls the die once again. Even knowing it's useless and that he's going to lose, no matter what number comes up, there's no way to turn the game around. Once again, the boy wins another chest, getting closer to victory with each round. This time, the acquired item is the Rosary of the Forest, an extremely rare silver necklace. Crying, the merchant can't take it anymore and knows he's already been defeated, and with each round, he only loses more items. In the next round, the 7th treasure chest is opened, heaving even more treasures. Mocking, the blonde asks his opponent not to cry, since sometimes you win and other times you lose. Irritated, the impatient one asks everyone in the audience to leave so they won't witness this ridiculous scene. The game is starting to get boring, as victory is now certain, and he rolls the die once more. Looking at his opponent, he jokes, saying he knows he's not crying, just sweating from his eyes because the room is so crowded. Finally, the 8th chest is open, and the acquired item is the Bow of Quick Death. The entire team gets excited, as the hero fulfilled the mission and won all the treasure, and much more. In total, he won 1,000 gold coins, 2 shields of the balance, 1 rosary of the forest, and a powerful bow, making it a complete and absolute victory in the game. The items go to the protagonist's inventory, which is now packed with money and strong equipment. He's happy, because he got everything he needed, and on top of that, earned a lot of money. What's still missing is the item Barmolo was going to steal from the revolutionary leader's house. The man, while lowering his hat, looks at the glasses and wonders why he's doing this. After winning the match, he tells his opponent they should shake hands and finish on friendly terms. Laughing cheerfully and extending his hand, he says it was a great and fun game for both of them. Seeing the man cry, he reflects that even though it wasn't a fair game, it was still interesting. Sitting next to him, he jokes that fire is coming out of his eyes instead of water, like it's a spell. The purple one says it feels genuine, that this was his first experience in a situation like this, and asks how he was fooled by a trick he already knew. The blonde is surprised, as it's strange that he was the first to create such a complicated situation for a merchant like this. He gets irritated, saying that obviously he had never gone through this before because no one has time to memorize dice patterns like a madman. After being called weird, the prince replies that he prefers to be called brilliant, not strange. The dealer says this really is the first time something like this has happened, so he doesn't know what will happen next, and asks his opponent to be careful when leaving the room, because the boss of this place already knows he lost a lot of money, and he's very angry and coming after the blonde. Shouting, the man wonders what he should do and says he'll steal the items back no matter the method. Sweet and cold, the prince wonders why his rival is suddenly saying this out of nowhere. The man in red approaches, saying this is the black market, and since he interrupted the local madman, he'd better be ready for the consequences. The boy gets so worried that he shouts, asking why the man is concerned about his situation, because it's strange to worry about the winner of the match. Taking off the mask, he says it's just a theory, claiming he has a younger brother exactly like the prince. As he removes the mask, the protagonist is surprised for a few seconds, unable to react. A scarred person responds that he just doesn't like seeing an opponent who defeated him with skill go to the afterlife so suddenly. The blonde jokes that the person is only in love because he lost. He's left speechless, irritated by the boy's boldness in thinking such things. Looking at the person, he reflects that he's nothing more than a human being with a complicated story and a difficult past. An NPC that exists only to defeat the main character, but after losing, has no more use. Extending his hand, he asks if the purple one will be okay after all this. Wanting to touch the person's hand, he starts to propose an idea for the two of them. But irritated, the man yells not to be tricked again, because it's obvious they're only feeling pity due to the loss. Even though it was a large sum of money, he says he can make it up by robbing a few people along the way, a behavior expected from a thief. Laughing, he asks if they really thought he was going to become a good guy just like that all of a sudden. Fulfilling his part of the deal, he takes the Shield of the Balance from his inventory and calls Herbal's attention to hand over the owed item. He receives the shield with some suspicion, but the mission has been accomplished. The blonde says this marks the end of their collaboration, and now the hooded one is on his own to survive. The boy has no objections. Neither he nor the protagonist are disposable NPCs once used. Even after working together, they have their own will, and thus will live longer than the system wants them to. Turning to Thompson, he asks him to guide them away from this annoying black market now that the objective has been completed. However, there are still several angry thieves waiting behind the wooden door, and perhaps these bandits might act kindly when they see a familiar face, implying between the lines the first sacrifice. This is the hidden effect called Friendly Shield. When two or more thieves know each other, their attack is reduced. Handing over the shield and the rosary to his team, the knight complains that it's not good to rely on this kind of protection. The redhead also complains that she doesn't know how to use the rosary of the forest, but the MC tells her not to worry, as she'll figure it out on her own. The vendor, upon hearing someone call the protagonist Your Highness, is surprised. He realizes that he's the prince of the Baltic Empire, but he doesn't feel fear, because the blonde is no longer the fool who lived only to eat, drink, and gamble. Even the bandit himself notices that the MC seems like a completely different person. Above all, slim and in shape. With no time to explain, he says it's a long story and promises to talk about it later, but he needs to leave immediately. Hiram is the name of the man considered one of the best gamblers and thieves in the entire black market. And even so, the protagonist managed to deceive him, leaving the man wondering just how skilled he is at gambling. After reflecting for a while, a hypothesis enters the masked man's mind. Perhaps the protagonist is a spy sent by the Empire. And it all makes sense, since the MC has an extremely intelligent view of the world, and if he can capture him, it will be a great treasure to sell. Drawing his swords, he now has a clear objective in mind. He realizes that if he can do this, he'll be promoted in his line of work. But something happens to his friends who fall to the ground in a heap. In truth, it's the knight, who is using his shield to push everyone away and prevent a longer fight, using all his strength. Thompson can't take this suffering anymore. He wants to go home and begs for help, which terrifies the assassin. Seeing all this, he wonders what is really happening in this place. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.